We are live. Hello, everyone.
Hello, everyone. Oh, shoot.
All right.
That probably wasn't synced for them, was it?
No. Well, it might have been. I used to do this thing. Oh, there we go. Sorry. As usual, we are reliant on you guys to let us know how the audio levels are. And you guys did me wrong last live stream because the levels were off, and nobody told me.
Yeah, they were off. Yeah, so by the way, listener immediately with got the warm like, oh no, the graph guy again. I can leave.
Well, actually, we were just talking about that because we were discussing what we wanted to get into in this live stream,
The
and
graph guy.
yeah, the graph guy. I mean,
I'm
like,
making that my forum
am I
signature.
am I not also a graph guy? You're just more of a graph guy.
That's true.
um, but yeah, so what we'll do for this live stream is we want to, I guess, talk about a couple of things first, and some initial sort of topics to get uh, just into the zone, and then we will get into Q&A, and then we'll get into spicy hour and field a whole bunch of questions. I see listener is in the chat, so I, maybe he's skipping out on work early.
Oh no, the HE560 guy again.
Oh no, yeah, exactly. I can switch to a different headphone. Um, as usual, guys, this stream is all of the live streams that we do. They are made possible by headphones.com. If you guys want to see our written reviews, check out the audio files up on headphones.com. If you want to see measurement stuff, linked in the description, and our Discord is linked there as well. So if you want to join us in Discord discussions and tell us that we're wrong, that's the place to do it. But with that out of the way, let's get into today's, I don't know, initial topic, which we were sort of thinking about this, and I frame the idea as kind of like, we are very much into the weeds, entrenched in the audiophile world, and specifically to acknowledge some of the commentary here about the inaccessibility of graphs and data and measurements. We love all that stuff. So the question, or the topic that I guess I want to pose to you is, how do we sort of demystify some of the stuff that seems highly inaccessible? Well, there's two things. One is, how do we demystify just this hobby in general for people who are considering wanting to get into good sound, or just like get somewhat into leveling up their headphone or audio setup. The other is for the people who are dipping their toes in, how do we make some of the more deep diving, inaccessible shit more accessible? And I want to get your initial thoughts on that.
Yeah, we talked about that a bit with Kryn, which was nice. Obviously not everything is a is a perfect take on that stuff, but I think that we're all sort of in a concord that the majority of what we measure right now, much less the majority of what we want to measure, is not really accessible to 90+% of the audience, which is not ideal.
Right.
Generally speaking, you want to target the 80%, not the 20%, I think. The the trouble always is, right, what compromises are you willing to make? Um, and I think that that's something where you and I disagree, which is good because that's fodder for good content. um, I
And
think
I
that
mean,
from
I don't know if we disagree on all that much. Just we may disagree on what makes things, where the barriers might be, I think.
yeah, I would say that's probably true.
Yeah.
I like that the chat is immediately pro sound demos, so that's the chat's on my side.
This is one of those things where they think they want something.
I mean, that's listener. Listener
Yeah.
knows what listener wants.
Yeah, exactly.
No,
Um
so I think that there's probably, and one of the reasons I wanted to have this discussion publicly, in addition to so that I could upset the guy who doesn't like the graph guy, which was part of it. Um, but in addition to that was because I'd kind of like to get feedback from people, right? Like this is something I wanted to talk to you about in general. And then I was like, hey, a lot of these things we have sort of a thought of, would that be intelligible to a normal person?
mhm,
Well, how do you and I know we're the furthest thing from normal?
mhm.
So we kind of need the people who are on, well, I mean, they're not normal.
No, they're
They're closer. They're closer to normal, okay? They're like, if we're three standard deviations from normal, they're like 1 to 2.
I mean,
And that's useful to us.
even that sentence. There's no way people aren't rolling their eyes at that sentence right now.
All
Uh,
right, but seriously, So I think that one of the things that you and I at least, have often assumed in the past is that people want metrics, right? Like scores.
Yeah.
And that's something that I kind of want to put before the folks. Yeah, I mean, like, particularly, I'm not sure if he's still tuned in, but Lone Star, if you're still listening, like, would you want scores for headphone stuff as someone who isn't, coming here to say, oh, I'm really interested in the acoustic impedance discussion? What do you, if you could get a metric for headphones, if you could get the data that we're currently vomiting out condensed into something, what would you want?
And this also goes to something Chronicles talked about, or he's done a video on, where it's, don't trust the scores, because a lot of the time the scoring, it's sort of an issue not just in the headphone space. I mean, it's sort of everywhere, but you know scores are typically 9 out of 10s, 8 out of 10s, that kind of thing for just about everything. And if it's terrible, then it's 6 or 7 out of 10, but it's never actually like 1 or 2. you know um
Well, I mean, it could be for us.
it could be for us, right? Is sort of the point. I remember at one point when I was doing my, this is more it was more for my written reviews, but I did do some in video reviews as well, where I would try and land on a score. And I've seen other reviewers also do like subjective scoring, right? I mean, it's not based on pulling data, or even a regression or something like that. It's based on how they feel it sounds for various different things. I'm thinking of uh the guy, the bad guy, good audio reviews guy. He does a thing where
He
he's got kind of
does?
like he's got like a overlay, I think, where he'll give it like a score for bass, mids, and treble, and then he gives it like a detail score. Or at least on a recent one that I saw of his, it was kind of like that. And I thought that was kind of a cool idea. I mean, it's all based on sort of. I know he does data as well, but like a lot of that assessment is based on sort of the subjective, report. But I think there's something compelling there, for the same reason that if ratings gives a score to something, it's compelling. And people don't necessarily actually understand what that comes from, or even need to understand, where that comes from. It's just that it's all about confidence, right? I've talked about this a little bit in the past, but really I think that's what people are looking for when they're looking for an indication of, on a product, right? They're researching, say these headphones, and they want to be able to find or have confidence in either buying it or not, right? If something is indicating that it's bad, then it's a matter of confidence as well. So I really think that's sort of what it comes down to. And whether that's given by, I mean, it's probably, you get a better sense of confidence, I think, if you have it be based on metrics and data. But I think you can still accomplish similar things by giving like a sort of a holistic score to something. So
Well, I think there's something to chew on there, right? Like,
yeah,
when we talk about scores, I guess I was sort of assuming that it would be on a per object basis, right? Per thing basis. Maybe it's a treble score, maybe it's a comfort score, whatever. I don't know.
yeah,
But ratings does actually give people the ability to say, hey, I weight this higher than this, right? And I mean, maybe that's something that is worth considering. Like, that's an intermediate step between here's everything, do your own homework, and here's the goodness score. Um,
yeah. I don't think people are going to do their own homework. Well, some people will, of course.
I mean, yeah, like we have listener, we got Abby talking there. Like, there's folks here who want to get in, and Scott, I think, who want to
Yeah.
get into the fairly deep nerd stuff. But for the folks, oh, my gain is too high. I can drop it,
Oh,
or
I'm
we can
sorry,
pump
guys.
the end here.
Thanks for letting us know. Thank you. I'm dropping it, so you will be the quietest mouse on the stream from now on.
I mean, yeah, keep me quiet.
It's the thing is, like in OBS, it tells me where the levels are, but that's not necessarily a perfect indication of how it actually is on the stream. So, yeah.
Why wouldn't it be?
I've tried to diagnose this. I have no idea, to be honest. But
Well,
the
that
levels
sucks.
just before were dead on even for both of us, but someone was indicating that it was not. So
I mean, I believe it. It could
yeah,
just be that, like, I need a compressor,
could be. But
which I do, but
yeah.
I don't have one.
Either way, back to the topic at hand. Pardon me. Back to the topic at hand. Um, what we were talking about,
Scores.
scores. Yeah.
So there's an interesting one that was raised by Gustav Kanungo, which is if you're going to include normal people, you need to first address the divide between those who care about sound quality versus those who care more about comfort and convenience. Um,
Well, you could do comfort and convenience scores, right? You could do scores for all those things.
hmm.
Like
I
as
mean, I'm not even sure I agree with the premise though. Like, I think that
yes, but we are getting to something that we were also sort of just talking about earlier, where the, for a lot of people, it's not even clear that sound quality, like what contributes to good when it comes to sound quality, right? It's just, oh, this sounds better than that, and it's not necessarily, oh, the bass is better, the mids are better, the treble is better, the timbre is better. Like none of this stuff is actually relevant in their minds. It's just, oh, this is really good sounding speakers or really good sounding headphones, um, and so I think that's probably like the most basic entry point. And if we can, if it's possible to satisfy that either with a score or an ease of access kind of on ramp to the explanation, I think it's already going in the right direction. But maybe this is also a matter of like um, starting with the crowd that is going to make the biggest noise and then trickling that down into more accessible means. So if we think about for people in the chat right now, you know I do think that there is a difference in terms of how they think about um, you know elements of the frequency response and how well those things are perform acoustically, and maybe a subjective kind of score, right, or that we might give. I think this is one of the criticisms that people have of ratings or purely sort of objective based scoring systems, where you end up with weird situations where something like QC35 scores better for some audiophile traits that or it scores better, overriding audiophile traits that than something like a Stax L700. And having heard both of those headphones, I can tell you very confidently which one sounds better. And it's not even remotely close. And so you get these weird situations when you have scoring systems that are trying to be all encompassing. So I think maybe at some level it has to be a little bit more granular. But now to hear from that data guy.
I mean, no, I think it's an interesting question because like ultimately what we're circling around here is kind of getting back to where Sean started, right? Like the observation is people can rate headphone or speaker or whatever X is better than headphone or speaker or whatever Y.
Mm-hmm.
The where he went from that is the predictive preference model. And it works pretty well, right? Like we have a model that will generally tell us if a headphone is going to sound better than another to about 60% of people. Um, I'm not sure that enthusiasts or even normal people are going to be as into that, though. I mean, like it's a really cool technical achievement,
Mm-hmm.
but the more I think about it, like from the perspective of would I want that in a store or something, or would I want that in a review that influences buying, there's the question of like, what about the other 40%? You know? Like why
Yeah.
what's shouldn't we be doing more to tailor it to the end user?
So here's actually just a quick question as an aside on that.
Yeah.
Do you think the other 40%, I mean, we know what those other segments are, right? Roughly.
Yeah. Well, we know two of the largest
Yeah,
ones.
yeah. But do you think for those who don't fall within the norm that their preferences are like because they're not chasing what the norm is, that they're gonna try and deliberately find more esoteric tunings? I guess a better way of phrasing that is like, are they more picky, or do you think that they're just as picky as the people who fall into the norm, and they just fall into a different segment?
I mean, I'm probably one of them, right?
Yeah,
Like I'm in the less bass than Harmon bracket almost certainly.
yeah,
The I wouldn't say I'm more picky. Like I enjoy plenty of, I mean, relatively speaking, enjoy plenty of, just lifestyle IEMs or whatever that
right.
you pick up for going out and about that have a harmony tuning.
So
Um,
it with that in mind, I mean, I'm inclined to agree. My stance on this, at least for the moment, is that um, it's really more a category of audiophiles that are the problem, or the
Well, I
category of
mean,
audiophiles where the
audiophiles are
pickiness comes
always the
in.
problem.
Exactly, where within the category of audiophiles, you have all the segments, right? You have people who are in the 60 whatever percent, and then you have people who are in the other two segments as well. And really, there it's like people who are chasing the dragon, oftentimes chasing more esoteric tunings because they're doing things to the music. And that's a different topic, but look, we can get back to the one,
Well, I
initially.
think so. I think that's interesting because I've never known someone who was chasing the dragon such as it was who didn't have a main headphone that they tended to go
Yeah,
back to, and
that's true.
that's
Yeah,
historically that's usually the HD 600. Not universally, but it's usually
yeah,
like of the people I know who have done that, it's usually the HD 600 or something else, which is from a Harman perspective pretty neutral, right? Um,
yeah.
I
Something
think
that can
that
be recognized
flavor,
for in all circles is great, basically.
yeah, I think flavor is like. I mean, obviously, I'm just one person. I went through that cycle, obviously. I mean, I've had everything from the DT990 to various stacks to eventually I just said, all right, screw it. I'm just gonna have the HD800 and I'm done. I'm just tired. I'm so tired. Um, I think that there's a really interesting experience of hearing music on a new tuning, particularly music that you really like, and it's
Yeah,
a tuning that does something interesting to it but doesn't mangle it.
yeah.
Um,
It's the
I
novelty
mean,
aspect of the experience, in a sense.
yeah, I do think for a lot of it, there's probably some way to get there properly with EQ. It's not like, as with always, it's hard to produce that same exact effect because you don't know what it was for that person. But I do think that people underuse EQ for that. But sometimes things are just sort of an emergent experience. It's a mixture of the headphone feels different, it looks different, it's new and neat and interesting. It gives you a reason to sit down and listen to a whole bunch of stuff you haven't heard in a while.
Hmm.
Like I don't have any issue with people collecting stuff, but I also don't think that you're really going to be able to predict that in the same way.
Hmm.
Like
Right. Yeah.
let's say that I'm someone doesn't like this at HD 800
I
is better
saw
than Stacks.
that.
HD 800 is better than every Stacks.
I would
Yeah, that's
definitely
I think
take.
the
I would take an L700 and just EQ it over an HD800, probably.
terrible take. Yeah, I think that's the only take where I ever agreed with the SBAF guys.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, they hate me though.
I like the HD800. I'm just sort of like
But the ergonomics, dude.
that's true. I will grant that. Oh, by
Like,
the way, question about the HD100 for you. Where do
yeah.
you land on the whole distortion debate? Is that how like that came up from?
Oh, the HD 800S.
Yeah. Well,
Wow, we're fucking doing some necrophilia for the discussion topics here.
this
You're
is a bit
digging
of a
up the
tangent.
bones.
Yeah.
That one was a debate in like 2016.
Oh, but it recently came up again where yeah, I mean, we don't need to get into that. We can get into that a little later if you want. If you'd rather.
No, I mean, I think it's an interesting one. Uh, the person who I trust most on that topic to have done the measurements properly, which is Oratory, who has compared more than one of each, has said that he found, I believe, similar levels on both. Now that might
And
may be
that's also what you'd
misremembering.
found as well.
Yeah. Now it may be misremembering, and it may be that there was like some HD 800s had slightly different levels of distortion. It's possible that those were just looking at like differences in how well the coil is centered or something, or maybe there was a slight revision, whatever.
Yeah.
But it doesn't look like it's an HD 800 versus 800S thing, as best as I'm aware.
Yeah.
And even if it was, I don't think it would be a significant problem. Like,
But it's amazing how that narrative sort of took off, and that like if you
well,
ask
people wanted a reason to hate the HD 800S.
yeah.
Like, people
Exactly.
really wanted a reason to hate the 800S. I remember
Yeah,
that.
yeah.
Wow,
Uh,
that's actually, that has a comparable to something else I'm thinking of recently. We might have talked about it on stream.
uh-huh.
I mean,
um
when things get overly hyped, people get angry, right? There's just like there's a desire to take them down a notch, I think, and that's with the HD100S. The hype was immense.
mhm.
The hype was really, really big, and really, what we got out of it was basically nothing, right? Like the H100, the 800S, they're basically the same headphone.
Right.
So I can see why people were like this annoys me, particularly because a whole bunch of people, like I got my HD800 because people were liquidating them for $500 when the 800S came out,
Right.
and that was dumb. But no offense.
Makes sense. I see here
That was
metal.
dumb. No offense. I'm doing the thing Kryn lambasted before. I shouldn't do that. I'm
What?
gonna remember him saying that. Oh well, in my opinion, you're a cunt. But that's just my opinion forever. That really sums up what we really need to not do.
Yeah. I see here Metal 571 says, but Mad HD800 isn't even strictly Mahler DF the correct response.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, because
I
it's
mean,
too warm.
it is like a downward sloping
Yeah.
DF though. So if you think about it, the HD800 was on my target before my target was my target.
Your
It is
target.
actually. All right, listen here, Sassy. I was pitching the downsloping thing before you worked at headphones.com.
That's true. That's true. But I'm the one I'm the one who takes all the flack for it.
I know. That's the best part. The
Yeah.
best part is that I've managed to make this your fault, but my
Exactly.
benefit.
Exactly. Yeah.
I mean, that's like my long-term goal.
But I mean, everybody is sort of getting on this same train, right? Because it makes the most sense, given that we don't have, the same body of research on this system.
Well, I think everyone's getting on the diffuse field train. Like
Yeah.
people have different
Oh,
interpretations
exactly.
from diffuse field. But
They're
yeah,
doing
no,
it
I think
slightly different, but yeah.
diffuse field won the ideological war, and I take full credit for it.
Yeah, exactly.
Um,
As you should.
I mean, not really. Like, listen, I was one diffuse field cultist out in the world. Um, there have always been others. I have no suspicion whatsoever that sound guys had any consideration of what I was doing, for example.
Yeah. What
Um,
aren't they? They may have changed theirs recently, but from what I read a while ago, it was like they were just basing it on what a bunch of them preferred. It was like their starting point was Harmon-ish or tried to do something like that, and then they went just what they preferred.
I have no idea. They started out showing the DFH RTF of their headphone, I remember, and then they did something to it, and they started having some really weird. Yeah, the listener says it's DF plus FF plus the average of a bunch of good
Yeah,
headphones, quote
yeah,
unquote. Yeah, that approach is a bit. Yeah, I mean, it's,
I remember reading one of their articles and thinking that's actually a really good article. Like just on that same topic, because it was right around when we were getting it, and we were getting into so I wanted to get a sense of what everybody else was doing for it, and I remember going, yeah, there's I don't know about the outcome, but at least they framed it in a way that was like, yeah, that makes sense.
I think that the really important thing there, and honestly, I think the really important thing in all of it is really just to accept, and we're maybe drifting back into our perennial topic, but to accept that if you look in tiny, tiny zoomed in detail level, every target sucks. Like
But
targets should really be
yeah,
considered broad brush painting.
but I mean that is like we are in a situation right now with just let's just say like the evaluative landscape, right? For if you like to get back to the topic at hand, if you are someone who has no idea about this stuff and you're like, I have a nice computer, I have a nice keyboard, I'm at my desk a lot, and I want to get some nice headphones. What do I do? And in that situation, you have like now the toothpaste is out of the tube and all over the desk and everywhere. And in a sense, it's difficult to go back to a time when we could have set everything straight and made it easy for people with I mean, even just the idea of preference boundaries, right? And shading and all that kind of stuff.
Well, and I think that a lot of it's, I mean, I honestly think that where we are right now with headphones, and probably where we'll always be to an extent, is probably something like where people are with like key switches, right? Like there are just actual discrete
With
preferences,
what
and
switches? Sorry.
keyboard switches.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
yeah.
S- Speaking of
Recently, I
which,
got some of these things.
oh
They
hey,
suck.
Metal sent me ones. Wait, are those ones from Akko?
Yeah, they're Akko purples.
Akko. So I have them in a different board, the GMMK Pro, because Metal sent me a bunch.
I tried them as a replacement for my Silent Browns, but I don't like them.
I would take them over Browns probably, but I just
Well,
got
no,
this.
not brown browns.
Oh,
Brown
okay.
browns are worse than
They're really
having
bad.
vomit on your
Yeah.
keyboard.
Yeah. And I just got a Keychron V1, and it's really good. I'm using it with their, I think it's like Gator on Reds or something like that. And I normally hate linear switches, but this one's all right. So it's way better than the GMMK Pro. Anyways, back
So,
to
but
what
what
we're
I
talking
mean
about.
though is like you like, all right, Joel is talking in chat. He likes the purples, right? I don't like the purples. You were like, oh well, I like them better than the browns, but I like something else.
Yeah,
Um, and the thing is, those aren't one of us being wrong, right? And they're not something where there's really an easy solution unless someone has actually had the ability to test at least some representative number of keys. Like
right.
if the only browns I ever typed on were MX browns, I would probably rather use anything. I would rather use rubber domes than MX browns.
Hmm.
Um, but I tried additional ones, and I'm like, okay, hey, there's there's definitely trends to what I prefer. There are discrete aspects of what makes me like this or that, and that's true of audio as well, right? But the problem is that it's different for each of us.
I do think there's still though a constant of good and bad, like
Well, yeah, I mean, like
at the
almost nobody
edges of
likes.
yeah.
Well, I mean, like MX Browns, right? Almost everyone hates MX Browns.
So,
Now that other
somewhere in
tactiles
the chat,
exist.
there's like that one person who's like, "MX Browns for the win." I
I
like
mean,
it to
the
feel
thing is,
mushy and sandy.
oh god, it really feels like a red with just a grain of sand in
Yeah,
it.
yeah,
It's so bad. Anyway, but I mean, yes, and there are people who prefer the shoot, what's it called? The campfire, the over ear, the really awful
Cascade.
one, the Cascade. Yeah,
Yeah,
there's people like there's a segment of like 15% of people who like that over the HD 800
I
or
don't
the
know.
HD
So
600.
I would suggest what people who like that headphone like about it is the absurd, ridiculous, overbearing bass.
Well, but I
Um,
mean, we have the segmentation paper,
but
right? And there that
I don't think that's unique. That is, I mean, that on its own isn't the thing that is. That's not all there is that's terrible about that headphone. For people who really like bass, that's actually a good thing about that headphone. I'd argue it's the horrificness in the treble that is
the
what's
treble is pretty bad. I
yeah.
mean, rehashing how much we hate that one is probably a bit extreme, but what I mean though is there are people who like that level of bass. And there are
Yes,
people who like linear switches, and there are people who like
but
quicker
are there
switches.
people who like lower treble harmonics elevated over upper ones where they're extremely spiky and that effect? Like say you have a 5K peak. Are there people who like that? I would argue probably less, and what they actually like in that case is massive thunderous bass.
Oh,
Just
I agree about that.
yeah,
Like what I'm saying more, I was pointing to the bass there more.
yeah,
But what I mean is like you need to have that reference point because until you try that, you don't know that that's sort of what you're looking for. And if that was the only thunderously bassy thing you tried, you'd probably prefer that over the HD 600, even though it sounds like
yeah,
someone skinning a cat. Um,
yeah. By the way, just Wegwe. I don't know how to say that. I'm sorry. Is an HE6 V2 an upgrade to an LCD2F? If you don't EQ, maybe.
yes.
Yeah.
It
If you
depends on which sins you want to accept.
exactly. Yeah. There's about. I mean, this is the thing though. I mean, I'd still EQ it, right? Because there's a 9K peak or somewhere in the treble up there. There's a peak.
Both of them can be improved by EQ.
Yeah, exactly. Um, I if you have an LCD2F, I probably wouldn't. I would, because
If
you
someone's like, "Can I get a straight trade or like $100 extra?" and you can listen to both of them first, well, I mean, if you can listen to both of them
oh yeah.
first, don't ask us, just do it. But like, if someone said, "I'll trade you an HE6 for an LCD2F," I'd probably take the HE6.
Oh
But
yeah. I mean,
if someone's like, "Should I sell my LCD2 for an
yeah,
HD
that's what
or
I'm
for an
thinking, right?
HE6?"
Especially if they're at whatever the like original non-discounted price is,
Oof,
because
yeah,
that's rough.
yeah.
Um,
No, I mean I like the HE6 better. Like having heard both, I like the HE6 better without
without
EQ.
EQ, I'd lean that way too. Um,
But
I mean,
also,
there's
don't do
other
super
things too,
chats. We
though.
don't actually get money. They
Yeah,
don't even pay us.
we're just here. That we're doing. This is
That's why I'm having to
I
just use a reflector pointed at the sun for my
I
lighting.
I was I was struggling whether to say charity or punishment. That's why we're
Punishment, if you
here.
will.
Yeah. Punishment for all of our transgressions. Um, but back to what we were talking about again.
Yeah. So
Okay.
what I mean though is like, I really think that for new people coming in, we need to figure out some way to get people to try more different things. Like, I think that that's something where, and I mean, we see that even in the Harmon work, right? Like, without the anchors, people's preferences become a lot less consistent. But when they have the high and the low anchors in the tests, they
Yeah.
it meaningfully improves the consistency of listening tests. And honestly, I think it'd be good to have people. I think that
This
I
is
mean,
you
we can't
stumping
we
for
can't.
sound demos again.
Well, maybe. Well, I mean, the alternative is it doesn't have to be sound demos. I mean, what did I do for switches, right? I got a sample pack.
Yeah.
Maybe that's the thing. Maybe like headphones.com should start renting a headphone sample pack.
Conveniently, there's a 365-day return policy, so
I mean,
it sort of
like,
does solve that problem to a certain extent.
well, I mean, that's our solution, right? But
Yeah.
that's kind of a shitty solution for both sides because on the one hand, they have to plonk all the money down up front. On the other hand, we get a lot of B stock. Which I mean, obviously it's better than people having a headphone they don't want, which is the whole point, right?
Yeah.
That's where Andrew and Taryn had really the right solution from the start for the options they had.
Yeah.
But I'd really love to be in a space where someone could come in and I mean, if it's a sound demo, it's a sound demo. But if it's not a sound demo, maybe it's we know how certain headphones measure.
I was
We can
thinking,
say, if you liked this, you might like that.
I was thinking they're like sound demos they're a thing that could be done right, like as we talked about in the past. But there's also a version of this that is like, here is what a V-shaped sounding headphone may sound like. Here is what a bass boosted headphone may sound like. Here is what a brighter headphone may sound like. Where you give someone, because I'm of the opinion, being a Frank Jackson fan of What Mary Didn't Know fame, that experiential knowledge actually counts for a lot. And we can talk until we're blue in the face about measurements and data and all this good stuff. But when people actually have an experience of something, it's meaningful.
You can't just reference What Mary Didn't Know.
It's a great paper.
I mean, it is, but I'm really a big believer in, what is it like to be a bat? Yeah, we don't know what it's like to be. We don't know what it's like to be a bat. Nobody here's read it.
Well,
unless that one guy with a PhD in philosophy who was talking the other day is here, but that's one guy.
Yeah.
So what he's referencing is a philosophy paper about the nature of knowledge and experience.
Yeah, so the idea is that, in that case, it's about seeing color, right? But basically the idea is that you can learn everything about a given topic, but perceptual, experiential familiarity with the thing counts for an additional bit of knowledge, or should count for an additional bit of knowledge. And I think we can apply that to our experiences of headphones as well, right? Or just audio in general. And I think that's also where some of the resistance to the idea of doing sound demos comes from, where that little bit of experiential knowledge is so powerful and effective that if done badly, which in every case so far it is, it actually has an effect of skewing people's perceptions on what things actually sound like. And I completely sympathize or empathize with that kind of,
oh no, I have
concern.
railed against bad sound demos for a long time.
Yeah.
Because it really it pisses in the pool, right? It poisons the well.
Yeah.
But the question is, if we're not doing that for people, how does someone who doesn't want to plonk down $300 and then send back a headphone 3 times to find the right thing, or B, plonk down $1,000
this is why,
send back 2 headphones, find out what they want?
You could do that idea where you have, like, let's say the average of the most common headphones that people might have, use that as the compensation, and then give 3 different or 4, however many different like sound profiles that they could apply to it. One is sort of like default, so they can get used to that. Then here's that same track with a V-shaped sound signature. Here's that same track with a bass booster, whatever, right? Different tilt. You get the idea. That it wouldn't be the same as actually having like an actual sound demo, but it would still be something that would help people have a better understanding of what kind of sound they may prefer. And
Yeah, I
then,
mean,
it could point you in the direction of like, these are headphones that fall under that. This is also, I'm not sure I'm necessarily advocating for this. I just think it's a cool idea.
well, I mean, like, hmm.
I don't know if I would advocate that over sound demos done right. It's more of like a.
So the problem with the sound demo, right? I mean, obviously done right, they're good.
Mhm.
But the problem with the sound demo is that it's sort of those are slightly different things,
Yeah.
right? Like, I mean, let's say this from the context of like the store, right? Because the store is where we have the most. Sorry for the inside baseball, but the store is where we have the most dev time, right? And it's the easiest to make changes. What would we want if someone is coming in and saying, "I've never had a good headphone before. What should I buy?" You know, and they're trying to figure out between the Sundara and the HD
Well,
600.
forget about the store. I'm more interested in how to navigate that when I don't know what the person likes as a reviewer. Like I have no idea. Like
Well, that's true. Like
asking me
the
that
guy who
question. It's
just
like,
asked earlier.
yeah, like I can tell you what I would buy, but that doesn't necessarily help them if they're in a different segment, for example, right, or even more granular. Um, so yeah, I mean, I think that's something where that's sort of like a big picture problem that I think does need to get solved, um, both on a just general accessibility front, but also on a more kind of like almost academic front. Like I'm thinking of the, uh, you're aware of the Malcolm Gladwell, um, his talks about, I can't remember what it was. It was about like pasta sauce or coffee or something like that. Where
What?
there was I think it was the coffee one where he's referencing something where people in a study about coffee, they a lot of people felt like they enjoyed strong, bold coffee, but in reality, they didn't. It was actually that they preferred, weaker, coffee, less strong flavors, but they just didn't like the idea of that. And it might be the case that people like the idea of, extra bass, but in practice don't necessarily, for example. Um, and so yeah, I think that there's like that's a problem worth solving on both fronts there.
Joel asks, so if you're advocating for a measurement-based sound demo that helps people find what they like, this is just EQ. Why not just use EQ on the most EQable headphone instead?
No, I think that's a good idea. I think
Well,
I think the problem there gets into you don't know what the playback equipment or playback headphone is. So there's a number of different ways to do that. I think one is they specify the headphone. The other would be to say, here's a general, sort of trend of headphone sound signature, and then use that as a compensation, as we mentioned. So you have
I mean,
misgivings about his suggestion?
well, so here's the thing, right? Like, imagine that there is something other than FR, right? Like, let's imagine distortion. Well, here's an example. We can't talk about what, but you had a prototype recently where it was sent to you and the FR looked okay, but there was audible distortion, right? And that's something where, that
Uh,
matters.
yeah, yeah.
Not the most recent, second to most recent.
Yeah.
Um, and that's something where, I mean, not every headphone does that, right? And not every unit of every headphone necessarily has those problems, but there are, you know, if there are these factors, timbre that's not FR related, detail, whatever, we should be able to record them. And if they are there, for things like distortion, we can record them and we can say, okay, well, this is what actually, is happening. This isn't just an approximation of the
Yeah.
headphone's behavior. This is the actual behavior of the headphone.
So I don't think there'd be any reason why we wouldn't be able to record them. Given sort of my assumption that all of this is somehow contained in FR or whatever else, right? That we already capture. Um,
In the transfer function of the transducer.
yeah. So I mean, from my perspective, again, we talk about this every time, but I've ranted about this. These sort of subjective technicalities, qualia aspects of headphones are in my view descriptions of the experience, not descriptions of acoustic things. But those descriptions come from real acoustic things that are likely measurable, like frequency response, THD, whatever, or even just not even THD, just like harmonic distortion, right? So or have some sort of external factor to them. I think there's also a related argument that these come from psychoacoustics in one way or another. There's sort of emergent properties there, emergent descriptions of the experience. But then also, the dreaded word placebo rears its head for sure. I mean, people love to connect. I think it's sort of like a natural thing for people to do. They love to connect a better sound quality to higher price tags, or even this thing is a really well built thing, or really well, like it's beautiful to look at, whatever. There was a lot of craftsmanship that went into this. Therefore, it is they're going to listen harder. And I mean, I think this is something you said, which is, who's to say they aren't having a better experience for that. I think that that's not exactly satisfying to people who hear that.
Well, I mean, I don't.
You're breaking the spell.
I mean, like, ultimately, we can't crack open their experience without actually like probing their brains or something, right? And they won't let us do that. I've asked, but beyond that, all we can say is, what can we detect in the ear? What's the sound pressure thing going on? And then what are they reporting subjectively? And figuring out where the difference between those things, or it's not even the difference because those are two different things. The connection between those things and what other factors are in play. That's the other thing.
Yeah, I mean, this is all the hard thing. This is all the fun of the perceptual theory aspect of all of this, right?
This is why I'm a solipsist.
Yeah, but I mean, you're like the sort of the idea that like your mental stuff going on, right? The what it is like of listening to a pair of headphones. That doesn't just come from nowhere, right? That comes from typically real acoustic things that are occurring. And
well, okay, now hold on. So like consider, and this is one of my favorite experiments that they ever did. I love this experiment so much. So they rigged up, right, a line of
You're
speakers.
doing Gunter Thiel here.
No, this isn't Thiel.
Oh, okay.
So they rigged up a line of speakers from a list. Oh shoot, I cited this like 5 days ago, 10 days ago. It's from a European university, I think. I'll find it in a moment. But they set up a line of speakers, right? Listener at one point, then they have speaker 1, speaker 2, speaker 3 further away. And they made them think, okay, well, we're going to play sounds from these different speakers, but they didn't. Then they had like lights to show which speaker was supposedly playing, but it wasn't. It was always the same speaker. And what they showed was, for the same measured SPL at the listening position, people perceived the level differently based on which speaker they thought was playing.
Right. So this is the same thing as telling people that a two-dimensional image is three-dimensional and tricking the brain into interpreting it that way.
I guess, but I think what's weird to me is like the loudness perception actually changed, which we usually think of as being really accurate, right?
Mm-hmm. Right. I was thinking of the one with the timbre changing.
Yeah, based on perceived source.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, so like, there's obviously stuff going on between the ears, right? Like that is affecting all of this as well. But I wouldn't go as far as to say that those experiences arrive from nowhere. Presumably, there's an external cause, and in the case of the experiment you just mentioned, it's that they were given an indication that it was at a different distance, right?
Well, yeah. So like it's not that these perceptions arise from nowhere.
Yeah.
It's just that these perceptions don't necessarily relate to what's in the sound.
They don't necessarily need to be an acoustic thing. It could be a mental thing that, triggers it. I forgot where we were on this topic. Oh, yeah. I remember what I was going to ask. So with that in mind, do you think, to get back to the whole scoring concept, we could come up with all kinds of different, scoring criteria or indices based on data that we gather, on a headphone. um, and as to its, goodness in various different for various different segments, however we want to slice that. Do you think there's also a requirement for a subjective score, as Critical does the technicalities score? And the reason I ask this, one is I think there's a lot of people who are they think of this stuff. I mean, more it's more familiar to think of it in terms of, things like detail and resolution or whatever, right? Soundstage is a common thing. The other is there are situations where that subjective description has actually been validated by the data. I'm thinking of Critical's example of the Blessing 1 with DD base versus BA base, which was sort of like, in a sense, vindication for the idea that, DD base is more, or whatever we want to call that, or we want to say it is more powerful or whatever. That, after getting the 5128, it revealed, real differences, in like acoustic differences. So I guess, that my question is, where do we place the value of a subjective or a technicalities type score?
I mean, I think scoring that would be, I think it would be an interesting experiment, right? But the problem obviously is you need multiple people, because otherwise all you're doing is just writing down what some person said they perceived. And it's interesting when some people perceive things and it's a group, right? But one person alone, it can be pretty much anything, right? Like I've had moments where I heard something and then I was like, oh, I was just having a terrible day that day. And so it's like, wow, this sounds awful. And then same system, same everything, turn it on next day. You know what? It's just I was tired and cranky and nothing sounded good for the same reason nothing tasted good, right? I think that's one of the things where having a score based on a composite of reviews could be interesting.
It is a requirement that you do meditation before every listening session.
Man, that does not bring me as much inner peace as it should.
Yeah, it actually makes things worse for me.
That indicates to me that you're meditating wrong.
Yeah, probably.
Maybe you should work on your mindfulness. I know there's another guy in audio who can recommend you some seminars.
Oh, really? Okay.
Oh, no, I'm sorry. I was sarcastically referencing. Never mind.
I'm not sure who that could be. So.
Never mind.
I have an idea who that might be.
So, anyway, I think one question to ask, though, is whether we really want to have, like, I mean, how many people who care about that are going to use something like that, right? Like, a lot of people I know don't even trust the perceived qualia stuff for reviewers that they don't know well.
Say the first part of that again. How many people are going to care about a subjective technicalities score if they aren't familiar with it? Is that...
Well, no. Like, I think that the people who have an opinion on detail are also the people who are probably not going to trust a given set of reviewers' impressions of detail.
You mean it's sort of like self-defeating in the sense, like you have... I
think
they're
it's basically sort of a connoisseur's score, right?
Yeah,
connoisseurs only trust people whose tastes they feel are similar with theirs.
Yeah. I hear what you're saying. I do still, at the same time, I do still think that vocabulary is a little bit more widespread, or it's a little bit like
well, now,
yeah,
give it time. I mean, like, I remember, I mean, this is still to an extent true, but like, I'd say Soundstage is dying as a meme among among people who are buying new headphones. Like, you used to see a million people saying, I'm a gamer, I need the headphones with the best soundstage. Yeah. I don't see as much of that anymore.
It is still shocking to me how much people care about that, though. Like, I see it on a regular basis as the key parameter that people focus on, which is why I really want actually Chrono to finish this video he's working on, because it was one of the things that we were like trying to determine just as a little kind of popcorn fun thing to do. We decided to hop into some games and blindfolded with different headphones to see how how much something like that really mattered. And what we found is that there's nothing consistent. There was a game where the HD6XX was far and away the best because it had the strongest like sort of sense of that center image, right? But then there were other games where the Odyssey Maxwell did the best. There were other games where I can't remember. I feel like I was wearing the Elite did the best. So people may be better or worse with different headphones, but the idea of that being uniquely, down to how wide or how spacious the soundstage of the headphone is not true in my opinion. And also, there was this meme a long time ago that if you had HD 800s and if you're playing CS:GO, you would be able to hear your opponents from the other side of the map. It's like, that's not true. That's not even close to being true.
Now,
It was verified.
I will say, of the people who are in our organization who we game with, the two who are most consistent in hearing audio cues are the two who game with HD 800s.
Are you talking about yourself and Chrono?
Douglas.
Oh, Douglas. Okay.
Douglas has good ears in games. He's not got a very good aim in
he's
games,
the one
but he's got good ears.
Put the HD6XX on him, and he gets the shot every time while blindfolded.
Probably.
So, or at least in the one we were
Chrono,
testing.
you mean?
No, it was DMS.
Douglas.
Yeah,
Really?
it was DMS who we were doing. I mean, it was me, Chrono, and DMS who were doing the blind sort of, because we'd blindfold ourselves and then we'd have someone walk around and then try and like blind fire and shoot and hit them. And with the HD6XX, I feel like it was Overwatch, DMS got it every single time, like just bang. Whereas for me, I feel like I was using the Maxwell, or maybe no. Then I was using the Elite. I was trying the Elite out, and I was having a bit more trouble with it. And we also tried other stuff with like some of the Dolby stuff. But for me, it was at least interesting that like the headphone that is regularly kind of scorned for having poor imaging. That's a common
3 blobs.
Yeah, is the one that DMS was able to get every single time. And so even just within the subjective, kind of analysis of some of this stuff, the common, the inertia of that narrative, it wasn't necessarily true.
Yeah. I mean, someone up chat said, I think it was Hobby Talk, said, unless you really decompose it into individual scores, what's the use in a qualia metric, right? Like, Hobby Talk doesn't care about perceived soundstage, but he cares about other things. Some people care extremely about that. Joel asked a good question. Is that dependent on how the game's audio processing works?
Yes.
It absolutely is. I was going to note, it's interesting to me that it sounds like that was probably the most diffuse field upper mid / low treble headphone that you had in that set, wasn't it?
No, the Maxwell was.
Oh, really? Is the Maxwell closer?
It's very. I mean, they're pretty close. For like ear gain, I can't remember if I did it like a cross comparison between the two, on the graph.
The reason I was going to say that is because you basically replicated an experiment that Teal cited in his 2016 paper, where people were having to place source locations using binaural recordings on headphones.
Right.
And so it wouldn't surprise me that something that has generally correctly shaped HRTF with binaural cues, which games have these days, would sound right there.
Yeah. Yeah, so the Maxwell did, to get back to the game engine thing, in Destiny 2, I'm sort of spoiling the video a little bit. In Destiny 2...
listen, we only have like how many viewers right now? You can spoil it to 100 people or whatever.
That's fine. So in Destiny 2, the Maxwell did the best by far, because you could turn on the footsteps preset, and the game engine, that was actually a case where the game engine didn't limit how far you could hear. It's just that it got quieter. So if you cranked up certain frequencies, which the Maxwell does for footsteps, when I think it's It's something in the bass and then something in the upper mids as well, where it just like boosts it like crazy. You could hear them literally on the other side of them. Like it was way better than every other headphone that we tried for how far you could hear someone walking away.
That's
Um,
basically cheating. I like
yeah.
it.
So in that, with that particular game engine, it was. We tried the same thing in CS:GO, and there's a cutoff point for where you can actually hear footsteps at the same place for every headphone. It's like you could hear them louder on the Maxwell, you know, when you had the footsteps preset on, but it wasn't like you could hear them further away. And so there was no actual advantage in that game that was limited by the game engine, whereas in Destiny 2 it wasn't. So
Someone in chat asked if the Focal Elysia is worth $260
if you EQ, maybe.
if it
Uh,
fits.
if it, yeah, I mean, it's if you're not wearing glasses, that one is a bit sensitive to the glasses situation. I don't know. Like I liked it after I EQ'd it. I thought it sounded pretty good, but
I didn't like it, but
yeah, yeah, glasses are a bit of a bummer. That was also before I wore glasses, and it's been a while.
wait, so you did start wearing. I was thinking, like, hold on, didn't he used to not have
I
glasses?
didn't used to wear glasses. Yeah, yeah,
Man,
it's
my
a
eyes have
struggle.
been broken my whole life.
Yeah, I've wanted to get the laser eye surgery for a while just for headphone reasons. I don't even think it would be that expensive for me because my prescription is it's not that severe, but it is enough where I need glasses, but it's fairly mild otherwise.
Mine is like my finger is a blur at this distance.
Maybe you just have a blurry finger. Maybe the world is just blurry.
Sometimes I do wonder about that. Honestly, it was shocking to me as a kid because, like, when you first get glasses, if you're a kid and you just grow up with bad eyes, you're just like, wow, the world is HD.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, that's that. For me, it was such a struggle to actually start wearing glasses because of how uncomfortable it was. Like, for most people, they're like, oh, yeah, 2 weeks, and then you get used to it. It's fine. For me, it was like months. And I kept being like, there's something wrong with these glasses. My prescription's wrong, whatever. And then eventually I was like, oh, okay, no, it's fine.
Joel is asking, why does the severity of your eye disability change the price of LASIK?
It's a
That's a
good
good
question.
question,
I
actually.
actually don't know, but I was told somebody from, like, because I was looking into this, mentioned, oh, yeah, it might not be that expensive if you don't if it's like a fairly normal thing or basic thing that they have to do. But yeah, I don't actually know if that's true.
Okay, so we should probably.
To go back to the thing,
Well,
like, you have some thoughts on what we should be doing, what we should be including
well,
in reviews, if we want to go down
I
that, or if
mean,
you want to wrap up the scores question.
yeah, I think that we should probably like save the deeper thing on that for another time, unless we have a complete lack of Q&A, because we
Okay.
kind of got into the scores thing, and that's a bit separate.
Yeah.
I was like, some of the things I have thoughts on are a bit more. Well, actually, one thing that I think, actually, no, there is something worth talking about. So, something I think would be really good in reviews, something I'd really love to see in our reviews, maybe not next year, but maybe in 3 years, and maybe next year, I don't know, would be, a comfort score is garbage, right? Like, comfort is so individual.
Yeah.
But what would be cool is having a bunch of people's impressions of comfort, right? And having some information about them to figure, oh, I have glasses, this presses on this. I have glasses, the pads conform around them nicely. Just in a really nice, well summarized, like, little block in reviews so that I can see, oh, this headphone for a person with or maybe even, like, hell, maybe even you can put in data about yourself and see, I'm a guy with a giant head with glasses.
Yeah.
Will this headphone does
Yeah.
the giant head with glasses reviewer think this
S-
headphone is ergonomic?
And
Does
that's
the tiny
something
head reviewer think this headphone fits well?
and that's something that can be solved by index scores, right? Of actual, like, you can measure the caliper force, right? You can measure
Yeah, but you have
the
to
earpad
wonder.
size.
You have to wonder at some point whether that doesn't get harder. Like, earpad size for sure, but caliper force, like, I'm really dubious on that one.
Well, like, I'm thinking of the Odyssey MM500 and LCD5. Those are so clampy that for anybody who is slightly above, the, like, slightly larger for their head shape or head size, it's just completely not going to work. Whereas if you fall in everybody below has no issues with it whatsoever. So it's a very hard kind of like cutoff point for the people who can wear those headphones. And yeah, I've tried them with the larger headband too. They're still nowhere near enough. You've tried the
Joel,
LCD5 as well, haven't you?
I did. It was clampy.
Yeah.
I didn't like it.
Yeah. No, not for you.
No.
I mean,
I like
big head
I like
problems.
I like a loose headphone. I like a headphone that fits on my dome. I don't like a headphone that's like squeezing my head into a pickle.
Yeah. No. Yeah. Yeah.
So Joel asks, do we have any evidence to suggest that comfort is any more or less individual than technicalities? You know that the answer is no, and I know that you're asking that knowing that the answer is no, because we don't actually have any evidence regarding technicalities.
Yeah. So but at the same time, I'm interested in that comment because if we're talking about having some multi person score, right, across different people, where it is based on their sense of whether or not something is comfortable, I don't see why we couldn't also have that when it comes to something like technicalities or subjective stuff. I mean, DMS and I were chatting about this even a long time ago, where we were talking about having a peer-reviewed ranking list, essentially. And I still think it's a great idea. I'd love to do that, where it's a little bit more like I don't just mean like people on our team. I mean like there's probably a way to do this where it can be a more general kind of like consensus-based thing, for a subjective score, right? I think
Okay,
it's
so
worth
when you say
exploring that.
peer reviewed, what do you mean for that's
So, for example, if I'm currently in the process of redoing my whole ranking list right now, and that is based on just my own personal kind of thing, right? And it just sort of had this thought that like, kind of related to what we were talking about before. It's like it is of no use. It is not of use to people who have different preferences, or people who may not who may not be paying attention to or caring about the things that I'm caring about as far as my subjective experiences are concerned. And so it'd be cool if there's a way to have it be like, okay, here is a ranking list that, DMS, Chrono, Golden, myself, but then also Android, Hobby Talk, Side Salad Audio listener, like that everybody's is sort of like at least somewhat in agreement on, for how things stack up. I think it gets more challenging the more facets you have, but it might be a situation where you can have plus or minus or something along those lines, and then eventually there's sort of an output there. I think there's a number of ways of doing that kind of thing, but the idea of having a consensus of some of this stuff that's based on more than just one person, I think would be useful.
Yeah, no, I think that my main question would be, of course, I mean, all of this obviously starts from we need to actually get people either on the same page or at least establish that people are on the same page about what the terms that we're talking about always
I,
mean.
I don't think that's
Like,
crazy. I don't
yeah,
think that.
I think
Yeah,
for ergonomics, it's easier than for sound.
yeah,
I
because
will
right away.
say, well, not always. Like DMS's complaint about the H800 is that he gets a hotspot, and that takes a little
That's
while.
actually a common one that people have talked about. I've never had that
Yeah,
issue
I've
with
never had
those.
that issue either. I think it's because my
Yeah.
head's a little flatter on the top. But like, so I think that you'd have to get a little granular with that stuff, but I think that it could be good. I think the problem always is that like the threshold of utility and the threshold of where it's too much of a pain in the butt to actually read it are in the wrong
Absolutely.
places.
Well, yeah, but you could make it so that it's more based around utility, right? Where it's I mean, Clinical has done this for his own list, right? Where he said this is just a snapshot, right? And there's a sense in which that is in the service of utility, right? I think there's probably a way to do it like that too. But the idea of getting everybody on the same page as far as the subjective descriptions of experiences, I relate all this stuff back to any other description of an experience that is based on like that's any other sort of subjective description of an experience. where those descriptions are already a little bit more agreed upon, to the point where if you go to the doctor and he's asking, do you have a sharp pain or a dull pain, is it a dull throbbing, whatever, all that kind of stuff, you can give a general sense of a report of that, and it's useful information to them, right? They're not asking you, does it feel like you have a unique type of tissue damage in this particular location, that they're not talking about it like that. They're talking about it in terms of your experience. And I think,
Although with a reference, notably, like a sharp pain references off of literally being stabbed.
well, sure,
It's like
but you
focused
could,
in a point.
yeah, but it could also be a burning pain, right? There's a whole bunch
Exactly.
of
No,
different
but I
ways that you
mean,
can describe this stuff.
oh no, I know, but I mean, like those are. I don't know. I guess it's just one of those things where again, it requires a reference frame.
I mean, you can have a sharp stabbing pain somewhere without getting stabbed.
I
It's
think that
just,
we have all been
I see. You're saying this is the Wittgenstein problem. You need a metaphor of some kind to be able to
Yes.
express that. I get
Yes.
what you're saying. I think the
Yeah.
same.
Sorry,
Yeah, no,
I
I get what
wasn't
you're
implying
saying.
that only stabbings cause sharp pains.
Yeah. But yeah,
Um,
I think we can have. I think that's what people are actually trying to do with their descriptions of various different audio things. I think that because this is a little bit more obscure, that those reference points are a little bit more varied, right? So that those descriptions end up not being as useful as I think they could be. But if
well,
we have,
I actually have a counter to that.
okay, yeah, let me hear.
I think that we're too ambitious with it. Because
Okay,
like you say, I have a burning pain. You say I have a sharp pain. My leg hurts. I hurt. I can point to where I hurt maybe. But
locatedness on its own is a weird one.
yeah, but locatedness isn't actually that precise for a lot of stuff,
It's
right?
not.
And our descriptions of pain are not very granular either in level or in type. Whereas our descriptions of sound, at least the ones that run into like I've never seen people who had a real problem with understanding the concept of, not every normal person uses this, but they can understand very easily the concept of, this is a bright headphone, this is a dark headphone, this is a bright speaker, this is a dark speaker. Right? They understand the
Wait,
concept of that.
our descriptions of our, you know, bodily harm, introspective bodily harm of, is, you said it's not that granular?
Yeah, that's my perception. I mean, like if my stomach hurts, if I say my stomach hurts, I don't literally mean my stomach. I mean something in my lower abdomen is causing me pain.
Oh, so we're not as specific with those descriptions.
Yeah, whereas with audio descriptions, and this actually sometimes this applies to, because our heads are so nerve dense, we can actually be pretty granular. Like we can say, yeah, this hurts just slightly above my temples when it pinches in here. But I think that we tend to do that a bit too much with our sound descriptions versus the physical descriptions.
I don't know. I think it's also because there are certain things that we can measure, whereas and we can talk about those things fairly, reliably. Whereas when we're dealing with like tissue damage, for example, or felt pains, it's often, that's often all you have. We're not exactly measuring our tissue damage.
Well, I mean, we could give someone a whole bunch of different types of tissue damage
the point
so
is,
that
you
they
could
had a
do it,
reference
but we're
point.
not doing it. Yeah.
No. So there's a question that really old cop keeps asking in chat, and I just want to address why we're not going to do this. Okay. So DCA's question, it's Resolve, can you please measure the same song played via a DCA headphone and a Focal headphone, level matched, and see if the dynamic range is actually greater on the Focal? So two problems with that, and of the reason that we're not going to do that. So problem number one, dynamic range is obviously going to be, at least to some extent, FR specific. Those two have different FRs. You can only level match them at one frequency. And if you do an average level match with one type of content, it's not going to match with another type of content. Shouldn't necessarily change the measured dynamic range because the lows and the highs should also be boosted. But the flip side is that an actual measurement of dynamic range should probably be frequency specific, and in that case, it does matter. Problem two, okay. I'm pondering where to start with this one. If we want to measure a headphone's linearity, its dynamic range, its ability to reproduce a quiet sound and a loud sound the right distance apart, we just take an FR sweep, right? And we take a sweep at a low level, and then we step it up, and we step it up, and we step it up. I've done that before. I've done that with Focals, as a matter of fact, and Focals, funnily enough, are one of the headphones that become dynamically range limited at a fairly low level because of the nature of their bass boost. Their bass frequencies begin to clip
I mean, you say low level. We're talking
at a
107 dB.
comparative, yeah, 170 dB.
Yeah.
Like 1 kilohertz, I think. So,
Yeah.
but I mean, comparatively low in the sense that, like a DCA headphone, I would be shocked if they were that nonlinear, 5 dB, 10 dB higher.
You know what I discovered about those when I was doing all that testing was the I feel like it was somewhere around like 11 or 12 uh, uh, hertz where
Oh,
the excursion limit hit first. And when I went below that, it actually didn't. Like the threshold changed, right? Depending on, because I was going below, I was doing the sweep, as low as I could to figure out where the excursion limit hit first. And obviously this is all gonna, like, in practice, this is all gonna be determined by the music that you're listening to. But so these are unrealistic because these are they're below the audible range. But it was like after I got past the first sort of like excursion limit threshold, as I went up, the threshold for volume went way up. Like I had to go way louder before it would start clipping. Whereas I think it was somewhere around even like 90 dB I could find at around 10 hertz, something like that.
so what you're probably dealing with there is, and I should note, when we're looking at excursion, right, we have to think about how the driver is actually moving. So when the driver is sealed to the ear, which for the DCA should be where it is, flat and FR, we should see the same excursion at all frequencies, basically, because it's a pressure chamber. Now, the problem is you can't have a perfect seal, right? You're not physically gluing the driver to the ear. I hope. Those are expensive. So there's going to be some leak, right? And below that leak frequency, you actually have the ability for it to excurse more.
Right.
So that's probably what you're
That makes
running
sense.
into.
Yeah, that makes
So
perfect sense.
you ideally, Metal, what the heck are you saying? You ideally want to measure those sorts of things in the range where the headphone is behaving well or normally or what have you. Because when you have a headphone that's rolling off pretty fast, you can be pretty sure that it's going to be pretty nonlinear as it gets pretty loud. And it's
Right.
the same with speakers, right? Like if you have a speaker below its tuning frequency, it's probably going to, well, actually with the speaker obviously below its tuning frequency, you get almost no output anyway with the bass reflex. But anyway, you're it's a pretty good bet that you're going to see a limit there pretty fast. And with the DCAs, the resonance frequency should be quite high, so I wouldn't expect the excursion to differ other than due to leakage below that much.
Yeah, just to get back to Jake's question there, though, about the
Jake's.
dynamic range. Really old cop.
Oh, sorry.
He used to write for us.
He did?
Yeah. Yeah, he's a music producer.
Makes sense.
Yeah. Paper Moon Records, I think. Folks can check that out. I mean, as far as I understand the question, or the spirit of the question, it's if there's something that we can identify that would contribute to the sense of, quote unquote, dynamics, and whether that might be whether dynamic range may be a thing that's responsible for that. But I kind of think that that's not what those reports are referring to. I suspect.
Oh God, no, it's definitely not.
Yeah, so I don't think that doing that kind of measurement would reveal anything about that. I mean, I think that's the idea between pitting a focal against a DCA, right? I think it's something else, of which I know not. But I did think the closest example we have of that phenomenon being a measurable real thing is what Clinical found with the Blessing 1, with the with going from the 711 to the 5128.
which notably was not a level specific or dynamic factor, but was just a load specific or ear,
Yeah.
factor,
Yep.
right? So that wasn't something that was going to vary by as you cranked it, it was going to get quieter. It was rather, this just doesn't have that much bass.
Hmm.
Or
Yeah.
rather, this has less bass when loaded with an actual ears load than it does with the 711 coupler. That's the accurate
Yeah.
description.
And
We got
maybe
there
the
eventually.
yeah. And maybe this is something that would be revealed in other situations too.
Yeah, I mean, I think that'd be revealed if you could like easily get a probe into someone's ear. Like
Yeah.
that's something I really want to do more of, but getting a small enough probe to use with multiple IEMs is quite difficult,
Yeah.
particularly with etymatics. People get really complainy when I stick probes by their eardrums.
You are. Yeah. Everyone loves it when Blaine comes over with his probe microphones.
I mean, listen, I have actually like when I was with family or friends, have been like, "Hey, can you hold still for a second while I caliper your ears to get some dimensions?"
Yeah.
So
That
that's
goes over
that's why
well.
you probably shouldn't come over to my house, I guess.
Yeah. Never mind the guard dog. Warning: we'll stick things in your ears. Um,
I only occasionally stick things in people's ears.
yeah. I think we should dive into spicy hour. We've done a little bit of Q and A
Yes.
here, but let's get some spicy questions here, guys. The spiciest, please. Um, I know we were originally planning on actually having DMS on, but I haven't heard from him yet. So I
No, I
think.
think DMS is ill.
Oh, he's sick. Okay, yeah. All right. Hope he feels better. Um, but okay, let's get the spice. Let's go. While we're waiting, I have a question for you. What's sort of just been, uh, what is a particular bugbear of yours that we didn't cover in the last weekend's live stream, um, right now, that you're uh, just to put you on the spot while we wait for some spicy
What,
questions
just like a complaint that I have in general?
about things occurring in the audio space. An opportunity to air grievances.
Yeah.
A grievance.
I mean, I feel like people get more obsessed with driver technologies every year,
Yes.
and
There's a
I
reason for
really
that.
don't like it.
There's a reason for it. Okay. Right now, it's the stealth magnets thing.
Yeah.
And we've talked about this. I did a stream on the Ananda stealth, and it was the stealth, not the nano, guys. I know it's silver, but it was the stealth.
The
Um,
Nano.
yeah, that's the nano. The nano is the new one, which also has stealth magnets apparently. But uh, I see regularly comments about. Actually, there was even a video from Joshua Velour that was stealth magnets at a low price tag. I don't remember what it was, but I think he was talking about maybe the 400 SE, something like that. Um, but this idea that there's flagship technology trickling down into these other lower priced products, is supposed to prop up those products, as a way of kind of um, turning the volume up on that particular technological story. Let's just say, and in reality, those things are just parameters that manufacturers can use. This has been what I've said on the topic for a while, and I remember I interviewed Dr. Fang Pian about this, and he's like, "Yeah, sometimes we use it, sometimes we don't. If it makes sense to use, we'll put it in. If it doesn't, we don't." Uh, and I think that's a fairly straightforward thing, but the community tends to run with these ideas that this is somehow a magical property that injects an extra sense of resolution or an extra sense of something into these products. When in reality, it's a parameter. It's something that you can use.
Yeah, and I mean, like it goes as broad as like driver type, right? Like people, and this has been a lot. I mean, I've been in this too long for the fact that I don't have gray hair yet, but like it's giving me gray hair that as we've been in here, we've gone from
I've
there's normal headphones
been
and
here for a while.
electrostatics, yeah, to everything has some sort of mythology to it. Oh, planers have the best bass, planers have terrible bass. There's no dynamics on planers. There's all the dynamics on dynamics. Electrostatics have an ethereal sound. Electrostatics have the most detail.
I will say
Everything.
there. I do think there are trends with driver types
I mean,
and
yeah, there's
technology.
trends in terms of how they behave, sure.
Yeah.
But people go a step further than this is something that can be used in a certain way and into
Hmm.
this is the only way to get the best whatever.
Blanket statements about a particular driver type or technology type.
Yeah. Well, and the assumption that if you want the best whatever, it needs to be this type. You know,
Yeah.
if you want the best. Oh, and I think like I actually blame IEMs for this. I blame IEMs for a lot of
It's
things.
stronger in the IEM community, I feel like, or at
Yeah,
least
I feel
it's very prevalent there.
well, I think in the IEM community, there's no consequences to fueling that monster. Like
Hmm.
in headphones, if you say, "Oh, well, dynamics have the best impact, but planars have the best just detail, but electrostatics have the best air," or whatever, you can only make one, right? But in IEMs, you can feed that all you want because you can just make a crossover and have all of the mean drivers
What
and
do you
say,
mean you can only make? Oh, if you're making the headphone,
yeah.
I see.
So like brands have an incentive in over-ear headphones in a way that they don't in speakers or IEMs to say, hey, it's really not as simple as just this is better for that. Always, forever, and you can't get better than that. Actually, there's nuance. Like you don't see Shankar going around and being like, I mean, like they make planers and E-sets, right? And they're not saying, oh, the E-sets are inherently the most detailed forever, always, because they can only make one of each, right?
Right, I see what you're saying. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Whereas for an IEM company and for they can just put whatever memes they want in. And the same for speakers. And speakers do have this exact same disease, and it is a cancer of speakers.
Hmm.
Like, and I'm really just sad to see it taking over headphones, I guess.
Yeah. I mean, yeah. I mean, from an evaluative perspective, like, I mean, I've listened to a lot of headphones at this point. I do think that there are trends, and I think that there are
Oh yeah, I
trends.
don't think anyone denies that.
Yeah, and that there are like like for example, a common thing to happen with planar magnetics is that slightly more ragged response in various different places. That's a very common thing to see happen with planars. That
Modes.
yeah, exactly. Um,
Just tighten them up, dude.
yeah,
And damp them.
yeah.
Those are the two things you love about planers, though, is
Actually,
when they're very tight diaphragms that are heavily damped.
those are the things I love about planars.
Yes, I'm being sarcastic.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Well, but there's counterexamples everywhere you go, right? Odyssey, LCD, whatever. They have a much smoother response, for example, than many other ones do. Um, like I'm thinking of the LCD MM500, maybe, or one of those. But also heavy damping, seemingly. Um,
Well, the
the,
MM500, I don't know what the MM500's response would look like without its damper. I would guess that it's relatively taut, though. Or
yeah.
do you mean that it has spikiness?
No, no, it doesn't have spikiness
Yeah.
comparatively. Comparatively,
I mean, like the Odysseys in general tend to be critically damp.
yeah.
Like that's their part of their design philosophy, as I understand it. I don't want to speak for Shankar here, but like that's something that's been a trend for a very long time. And it's good, right? Like it's good as long as you're not looking for the lowest possible resonance frequency.
Yeah, the no resonance frequency gang.
Yeah. Well,
But that's a
okay.
topic for another time. Let's get into
Yeah.
spicy hour here. Listener says HD 600/650 are no stage. What does SW mean?
I don't know what SW means.
Because of their adherence to DF plus tilt, FR deviations from DF standard cause miscues in localization, whereas DFness is a headphone at its least localizable sound.
That
D-
is a spicy take. That is a very spicy take.
Hold on, let me just make sure I understand this correctly.
I get it. Can I rephrase it to
Yeah,
you?
yeah,
Okay,
please do.
so what he's saying is people, when listening to stereo, perceive the HD 600/650 as having no stage because there are no fake localizational cues. So a headphone that matched DF worst would have some cues that were baked into its response and that could give you a sense, particularly with some,
Mm.
given bits of sound, that it was coming from a different space. Whereas the 600 is like directionless by default, but he would argue that's also why it's good for something with an HRTF model because you're applying those adjustments to something which is a correct baseline.
Okay,
With
but
DMS being the example.
but isn't this also kind of similar to saying um, headphones that are strictly neutral uh, won't sound meaningfully detailed because there's nothing jumping out at you?
I mean,
Or
yeah, but I think that it's more empirically grounded. Like, I can actually see a case for, like, it's basically the converse of this headphone sounds wide because it has a dip in an area that we associate with things that are further away. So he's saying these headphones don't have those
yeah,
little timbral
uh,
adjustments, so we perceive it as just sort of coming out of wherever.
yeah. I mean, I think it's also giving a lot of credit to the HD 600 and 650. But
I believe in giving credit to the
I do,
HTC.
I do
I
too. I'm
don't
just
even
saying
like them that
that.
much personally, but
Because I was gonna say though, like that, like you could in theory get, like it's not like I wouldn't EQ those headphones. Still, I mean, I'd probably be less inclined to EQ those than other headphones, and certainly wouldn't recommend, wouldn't think it's a requirement. But I personally would still do it. Um,
what do you EQ on the HD6, whatever?
I actually have an EQ profile for it. I posted it somewhere. Yeah, I even out a couple of the things in the treble and the. I do reduce 3K by a little bit, and then I also fix or change the bass. But I don't go too much in the bass because then you start getting distortion. So I just a little bit extra there in the bass.
There was something that I thought was the spiciest question that I've ever seen, but then I
Okay.
realized there was a second line. Nanamu said recommendations for an IEM for someone who doesn't enjoy listening, and I was just like, wow, that's deep. But then I was just too any IEMs at
Earplugs.
all.
Earplugs. That's what you want is earplugs. Yeah.
Oh,
Well,
okay.
yeah. I don't
So
know
no,
if I had an answer to that.
yeah, no, I don't think that that's really answerable to us. I really wish it had just been the who doesn't enjoy listening. I hate music. What should I use?
Yeah.
Maybe something really midsy? I don't know. Anyway, um,
Do new
spicy take.
SA6.
Is that a diss?
No, I like the Do new SA6.
Ah, I see.
It's just a very easy to listen to IAM.
That's fair. Gustav Kanungo says, spicy take, we should fully fix a speaker target and instead focus on how to recreate that tonality across multiple situations.
Fully fix the speaker target.
So I think he's saying we should have a canonical reference of this is how your speakers should measure in your room. And then we should make headphones that are voiced to sound like that.
But isn't that kind of, I mean, should is that discounts a little bit of the preference element, though, doesn't it?
It does, and it also has the problem of like, what about all the recordings that were made
Yeah.
using other speakers?
But there is a sense in which some headphones are tuned with an idea of that in mind. In particular, I'm thinking of some of the Odyssey ones, or at least that's what I feel they were going for. Like some of the more recent ones, where they were like, this particular recording studio will have Bobcats do the tuning. All
Wait,
that
is
kind of
that
stuff.
is that actually how they did the
I
MMs?
How they did what?
Is that how they did the MMs? The MM 500s?
Oh, I don't know. I don't know about those specifically. I think those are the Manny American ones. I was thinking of like the new style of tuning that they're going for. Um, I think is trying to go after a particular studio kind of sound.
Interesting.
At least that was my understanding, sort of.
I mean, you've talked a lot more to them than we have, so or I have. We,
Yeah. Well, I
the
mean,
royal we.
like that was the kind of thing though, right? Where it was like, I mean, this goes back to like a conversation I had a long time ago with Karthik, and I don't want to misrepresent the position that they had, but a lot of it was more, I think, a little bit more along the lines of like delineating preference from accuracy to a given situation.
Would you say that the conversation was Karthik with detail?
What?
Nothing. Never mind. Let's move on. The joke
Did
didn't
I?
land.
Okay.
Okay. Yes. So, but yes, I get what you're saying. Though they're basically trying to have more of a. I mean, obviously, it's all preference, right? Like the reason we would make a given in-room target for speakers is because people prefer it.
Yeah. Yep. Otherwise,
Yeah.
yeah.
So I will say I don't agree with Cousteau's take here, though.
Okay.
Um, Two reasons. One, as you touched on, people have preferences. Two, headphones will never sound like speakers in a room without binaural processing. And even then, you really need head tracking to make it work. So you're not going to have the same timbre if you have the same response at the eardrum. So you really have to treat them as somewhat different paradigms of art,
Mhm.
or do head tracking and HRTF compensation and have some, like virtual sound sources. That works too.
Right. Um, from Chef Steve, we need multiple targets. For example, the bass head target, treble head target, etc., and then pick your poison. That's a little bit like what we talked about in the last stream, where I think it was Joel or maybe it was Super Rut suggested that, um, we have targets. The FR gets associated with whatever target it ends up more closely adhering to, so that people who are in that segment would have a better sense of how it would perform for that segment.
Yeah,
Um,
no, I think that having, I mean, like we know objectively that there is a variance in preference, right? So I think that's just an outright, like I don't even think that's a spicy take. I think it's a good take. Like I think that
so
really that's something I'd like to see. The question is how we represent it,
So,
right?
and this is the thing, right? Because there's a scenario there where if that happens, then you're just apologizing for the headphones' bad sound quality.
Well, people are always going to say that. We could do
People say that
anything
to
and
us
people would
already,
say
and we
that.
don't do any of that shit.
I mean, fuck, we burned a brand over that and people
Yeah,
still say
yeah,
that.
yeah,
So no, I mean like you'll never get away from people criticizing for that, but like I think that from the perspective of trying to give people a better idea of how things will behave for them,
hmm
I think that it's a good idea. But the question is, is it best to represent it as, oh, here's a bunch of targets that just tends to turn into line spaghetti that's not very
yeah,
readable. Here's the closest target. Oh, well, then it does kind of look like, then what if you're not in that segment, right?
hmm
Should you just ignore it completely? What if it was still not bad for your thing, but it was closer to something else? I mean, ideally, you make it user interactable, right? Like but we can't do that in videos. So, do we
yet,
represent it as a range? Do we represent it as a range with like some like shaded trend areas?
yeah. Oh yeah, at the very least, I like shaded trend areas and ranges for things. I think that that's helpful. But yeah, the next headphone reviews are going to be choose your own adventure.
I mean, honestly, like maybe we should do that. Just have
That's not a
like have
not a
the
bad idea.
timestamp set up, so it's
The
like
thing is, you
if you prefer
no, no,
X,
no, but not
click
even that.
here.
At the end of a video, you have the option to insert end cards, right? And
Yeah.
and you can do two end cards, and those could be your direction that go. You could leave the videos unlisted, right? And it could just take you to whichever one you choose, and you could go to the next one. you know, and then
I
this
would
is.
actually enjoy that.
I think it's a great little. I think DMS was actually suggesting this because somebody else did that, and it was this thing that did really well. So I'm going to give DMS credit for that idea. But I think it'd be great. Yeah. Headphone reviewer, next headphone reviews, or choose your own adventure.
Does that count as our spicy take?
No, I don't think that's a spicy take. I think that's just yeah, something fun to
Also,
do.
FC Construct says, "Tell us about square planar drivers." Do you know? Did I miss a meme?
Square as a what?
Like presumably like squares and rectangles for the drivers.
Like all Odyssey drivers?
Yeah, I mean like all Odyssey drivers, I guess. I mean they're kind of the edges are rounded a bit. Okay, well there I told you.
Um, just
All right.
so here's a question from Rob. In IEMs, what driver type would you get rid of if one had to go? Like if you were to just say deleted from existence.
I mean the obvious answer is electrostatic.
The yeah, the not really the EST drivers.
Yeah. I mean, like if we can pick anything that's ever been implemented, the answer is AMT because technically O'Bravo made an AMT once and it was predictably terrible.
uh,
But for things that are actually implemented by people who don't have like bovine spongiform encephalopathy, it's got to be the electrostatic drivers. They're just completely impractical.
hmm.
I think the better one is out of the popular three, planar, balanced armature, and dynamic. Which one do you kill?
Well, for
For,
IEM specifically,
yeah, for Fryam specifically.
balanced armature.
Planar for me.
Actually, yeah.
Honestly, it pretty much you just kill one of them until it's just DD left standing. Like
Let's
DD
just
is
say
the only one we can't stack.
I don't like BAs because uh they have a certain kind of timbral quality to them that's not enjoyable.
And I mean,
um
they're expensive. They're very efficient, which is nice, but they're not really
well, I
good
was
for
going to say
hi-fi.
there are benefits in the sense of, as we were talking about before, you know, tuning precision there's certain advantages with being able to throw lots of shit in there.
But you can do that with dynamics too. You just need to make smaller
Yeah.
dynamics, and they
Yeah.
do now. So
Yeah. No, I think you're right about planars being the ones to go there because they're. I mean, even in the best examples of them, there's still. Yeah, there are still issues. I'm thinking of like the timeless. Um,
Suni says audiophiles should really start caring about ergonomics and aesthetics before buying $4,000 Eldritch horrors.
okay, I have a question for you that's related to that. Um,
Yes.
I was thinking about this in the context of this is a stupid analogy because it doesn't actually hold, but when people are buying cars, you can
Uh-huh.
you can buy like people can buy any basic run of the mill car that'll get you from A to B, and because there are speed limits on roads, you generally can't get there, or I mean, people do drive faster, but you get the idea. Like
You
you're
shouldn't drive
you shouldn't
faster.
drive faster, and then also you're kind of going at the flow of traffic anyways. So getting from A to like, having a more expensive car in today's age doesn't necessarily get you from A to B any faster.
That's why I have very high bandwidth headphones so I can listen to my music twice as loud or twice as fast. Sorry. I just turn everything at 2 times speed.
Yeah,
I do the
exactly.
same thing with YouTube videos. I
Actually,
have to
YouTube
have
videos
that
make
40
sense. Yes,
kilohertz.
YouTube videos make sense. I'm usually like 1.25 at least. Um,
But not music? You're not music maxing?
no, I don't. No, no. I like, yeah, exactly. Um, but the point there is, people still buy, $50,000, $60,000, $100,000 cars.
Well, people buy $50,000 cars because you can barely buy a non-$50,000 car these days.
Yeah, that's unfortunate. But the point is more when you're buying, oftentimes when people are buying more expensive cars, yes, I recognize that there are also actual, real, tangible performance benefits to those more expensive cars. But in the majority of cases where people, like those cars are being used, like say luxury cars, right? Um, it's often because they like the look and the feel. Like I was thinking of this specifically in the context of like how people get really excited about the feel of the interior, like nice soft touch on the dashboard and stuff like that. It's like, when are you ever touching that, and why does it matter? It's not. It's just because it looks nice. And there's a you get the analogy to certain types of audio equipment where people, they're spending the money specifically for the reasons of appreciating a nice looking and feeling object, not necessarily because there's any sound quality benefits to them. I want to get your take on that idea, but there's a related aspect where in most cases those people also think that they're getting performance benefits along the way.
I mean, I think like I'm actually looking at the question of getting a car sometime in the near future. That's very
You can
close to home for me.
You want mine? I'll sell it
No,
for cheap.
no, I don't want yours. I mean, for one thing, I'm hoping to get an electric car, which is part of the
I see.
reason, but also because I know what your car is like, and I really don't want your,
Yeah,
even
you've
if it
been in
was
my car.
free.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't want to be in your car again.
Hey, it is a technological marvel. It is truly remarkable, that thing. You can fit anything in it, and it fits anywhere. Hence the name.
Yeah. Well,
I actually did buy a new car. It's just on the way.
nice. What'd you get?
Toyota Corolla.
That
But that,
seems very in keeping with your style.
yeah.
And I
but
mean
it's
that as a compliment.
but it's the hatchback version, so it looks nice,
I
and it's a
respect
smaller
it.
wheelbase, easier to park. I can fit more things in it if I fold the seats down, which I will 100% of the time. If people want to,
100%.
yes. So if people want to sit in the back, they have to sit, seats folded down.
Damn. I mean, that seems a little bit harsh,
Gonna
but you
bolt
know
them to the
what?
floor.
I mean, honestly, I respect it.
Yep.
Okay, so no, I mean, I agree in general. I think that honestly, one thing that headphones probably could, and speakers and headphone amps and stuff could probably stand to copy from the automotive world is that they'll have a platform, right, which is basically setting the majority of at least the performance capabilities, and then you have however it
Yeah.
was, tuned,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
and then you have the body work and the luxuries and
Yeah.
stuff,
The
and that
higher
gives
end
you different
tiers.
trims.
I
Like
kind of like
I
that. Yeah.
like I would like to be able to have the option to buy like an economical version of an amp, right? Which is like the equivalent of like your bass trim, which is in maybe a smaller box and has a little plastic knob and maybe doesn't have a great volume pot or whatever. And then, the same amp, same circuit, same power supply, all that, but it's in a nicer case. It has a nice attenuator. It has a
Yeah.
nice, has a better pot, or maybe it has stepped attenuator. But, I don't need the other stuff, right? Like I don't need it to
The
be.
whole amp is soft touch.
I mean, maybe, maybe people want that,
Yeah.
right? But like, I don't need a different amp, right? I just need a
Right.
different experience with the amp that I was already happy with.
Yes. 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 Now you could even take that to headphones, though. I would love a plastic LCD2F, for example, right? Or
Well,
like I'm not saying I personally, but like imagine somebody
so,
getting
but how
the
much will you
non-wood
actually
tier.
save with a plastic LCD too?
Yeah, I actually don't know. I'm not sure, but
I
it's not
mean, I,
about
I don't disagree. I actually kind of think it works better the other way around because for a lot of companies, the majority of the cost isn't the housings, right?
right.
That's like if we're gonna sell a $2,000 headphone, we'd better sell it. Oh, it's like how the base trim of a premium car isn't gonna be having like shitty pleather, right?
Right, right. So
Um,
you would just go like start at an LCD2F, but then if you want the ultra light version of it, you can get it for an extra $1,000 or whatever.
yeah, or magnesium, or I mean, like the HJ600, right? Like this, I mean, DMS talks about this all the time, but like, why can't I get a blinged out, metal bodied, better built, better padded HJ600? Same tuning, same drivers, just a better housing.
Yeah, yeah. Honestly, this is like our industry does need to take after the car industry. Also because model years.
Yeah, and we could also start having subscriptions for heated
Oh
elements.
God, that's the worst part. That's the worst part.
You don't like that idea?
No. Subscribe to be able to use resolve EQ on something. I hate that.
Dude, you should do that.
I
We should
know,
do
I
that.
know. It's a good idea, and I hate it. It's so anti-consumer and dickish.
The vegan vicar says then the 600 would be heavier. Not if you use magnesium cleverly.
Yeah. Okay. Let's get to back to the spicy things. Base.
Yes.
This is from Brandon. Base quantity is overrated. We need to figure out how. Depends who you are. We need to figure out how to get enough quote unquote slam without smearing into the mids while also maintaining bass quality. I mean, I think that's actually a very audiophile take generally, right? Like that's yeah. But
I mean, I don't think it's wrong,
it's
but
not
like,
exactly the spicy, but
well, I mean, it depends. Like, if you mean like if you could have good bass that was flat and that would be most preferred, that's kind of wrong, right?
mhm,
Like, we know
mhm.
that that's not preferred by most people. Not everybody, but by most people, that's not going to be preferred.
You
But if you
just
mean like,
tip it up a little bit, just a little.
yeah, like you don't need 10 dB of bass
Yeah.
for
Well,
most people.
this is actually my criticism of most IEMs is that when they do go for a bass shelf, it's like this giant, massive thing, and you don't actually hear the bass that much because it's just, or you don't hear. It's just all bass. You don't hear the bass as part of the music.
Yeah, no, I mean, you really need to, particularly with large boosts, you really need to be very careful on how you integrate them. Otherwise, it doesn't really sound like a bass boost. It just sounds like mud-fi.
here's here's a spicy take from Chef Steve. Get every reviewer's target, average them out, instant target. Jesus Christ.
Chef
Uh,
Steve, you had a good take before. Why did you ruin that?
you've killed Blaine.
That take does kill me a little bit because the thing is, one, a lot of the reviewer targets are just some weird IEM. Like that's basically just grab a bunch of IEMs. Like think about Theo, right?
Yeah,
His
yeah,
was
yeah.
the
U12T, I think.
the U12T. He was
Yeah,
the U12T guy. I remember now.
yeah. Until he sold it.
Yeah, now he's not the U12T guy anymore. He's the U4T guy.
U4S.
Oh, is it?
I think
Why
so.
do they keep changing the suffixes?
No idea. We should ask them.
Yeah, we need to have oh shoot, what's the CEO's name? Is it Alex? Um,
I'm not sure who's sort of in charge of what there.
Yeah, we should have
There's
someone
somebody
on.
named Vitali, I think.
Oh, Vitaly, that's it.
Yeah.
But yeah,
Yeah.
no. So, but yeah, no, terrible idea. I hate it. That idea makes me want to die. Um, because it's really just the equivalent of saying, let's take, the top selling headphones on like Tomon or Crutchfield or something and combine them for a target.
Yeah.
Um, which I really would not recommend doing much. I know that it seems intuitive to say, oh, we'll just sort of average it out, but oftentimes you end up with all of the downsides and none of the upsides.
Yeah.
From my point of view, you really want to start from a very clearly defined, you know, head-related transfer function-y part of your target, and then add maybe an average, or if not one average, maybe multiple averages, which can be looked at separately, of preferences. Also, listeners DMing me to address his hot take, and so is Joel.
So we
I'm getting
shouldn't.
multiple.
We
Yeah,
should we
we're
should
gonna.
just address Joel's actually. No, I'm just
No,
kidding.
no, we should. There's another hot take to address first, I
Okay.
think. Let's see. Above that, Joel says 6 dB of in-room bass and speakers is way too much, and those who prefer that should be ashamed of themselves. I mean, I'm not sure about ashamed. I also think that it's really because you're usually going to be in the modal range of your room for the bass. Averaging 6 dB doesn't mean peaks to a max of 6 dB. So,
Th-
I'm not super sold on that.
So this is a shot directly at Taryn and listeners.
Yes, and listen.
24 dB target gang. Um, so here's a sort of a related question to that. Yeah, a long time ago, I had this sort of critique about the idea of preference and a sense of neutrality being the same thing, or being leading to the same thing, because you have that person with a Toyota Tercel and a subwoofer who just likes it for all kinds of reasons unrelated to sound quality, but they're just like, I like to feel it rattle my ass, right? And
There's cheaper ways to do that disturb the neighbors less.
Yeah, probably. But disturbing the neighbors is part of it. People drive Harley Davidson motorcycles for presumably that reason alone. Shots fired, and I will continue to fire them. But like there is that element, right? It's not necessarily even what they prefer. It's all the rest of the things that go along with the sensation of massive, powerful bass. That make it seem desirable. Is it possible to separate? It doesn't even make sense to separate, those elements from general listener preference.
What do you mean, listener preference or listener preference?
Yeah, that's kind of where I think that the question
No,
leads.
but no, but I think in serious, I think it is pretty separable, right? Like the difference is what are people going to want in the long term?
Mhm.
Because you don't want your butt to be buzzing all the time. At
But
least
maybe
I
some
don't.
people do.
If they do, then that's just their straight up preference, right? And
And do they
maybe
think? Do those people think that that's neutral?
I mean, I think they might be socializable out of that tendency, but yeah, I think at a baseline, that's the perception of. Well, I mean, neutrality in the bass is hard because bass as an experience of acoustic music is really variable. Like, I don't know if you've spent
Yeah,
much
yeah,
time
yeah, yeah, yeah,
close
yeah,
to
yeah.
like a standing bass, but as you move around, it goes from wow,
Yeah,
I'm rumbling with a string to damn, that's a funky bass line.
yeah, yeah.
So I think that we have less of an anchor there than we do with things where the wavelengths are small relative to the playback spaces we're usually in.
Yeah, but I still think that
Um,
there's like in extreme examples where
well, I just mean I'm not sure we have a sense of neutral bass as
we
such in
don't
the
need
same
a
way we
sense of
do
neutral
of.
bass to know when it's not, though, is my point.
Well, I don't know. I'm not sure it applies because like I don't hear like there's not a like Teal calls it like tone color or whatever.
Yeah,
But like when the harmonics are fucked up for a string instrument, you hear it as, the timbre is wrong or
yeah.
whatever you want to call it.
Or it's in a hallway or whatever.
Yeah, but you don't get that with bass in the same way. So I feel like that's just a difference in how we perceive bass, and I'm not sure that neutral and bass, for how I think of
I mean,
neutrality, intersect so well.
but Isn't there that? I mean, so you're saying like we shouldn't even be using that as a qualifier to begin with?
Yeah. I mean, well, I'm just saying it doesn't log to my experience, and I'm not sure that it logs to what we have real references for in the real world, like we do for higher
Right.
frequencies and
Yeah.
for mid frequencies.
I
So
see what you're
like,
saying. Yeah. I don't know. I think that there is kind of like even among, let's say, like non enthusiasts, there is still a distinction to be made there between, oh, here's what I like, and then here's neutral. Like I mentioned this before, but like I have a buddy who's like, I love V-shaped sound signatures, and he's like, is it neutral? If it's neutral, I don't want it. I want it if it's V-shaped. And I'm like, okay, so we have in our minds a distinction at some point between that and I think you can run that analogy or that distinction even further, and where it gets into a point where it starts to muddy up, concepts of preference and perceived neutrality.
I mean, honestly, like neutrality from my point of view is useful insofar as it's useful, right? When people are using it in a way that's consistent and that conveys something meaningful, it's useful.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not sure that happens so much with bass. I think people are pretty good at perceiving bass separately. Sean might disagree with me
I
there,
was
and
gonna
I'm,
say, yeah,
but yeah, I don't know. I have mixed views on that one. I feel like it's something where we just sort of end up in a semantic argument that spins around in circles forever.
I mean that's what literally all of this is, though.
I'm aware of the fact that that's our primary job is to spin semantic arguments around in circles for the rest of time.
Yeah,
But
yeah. Maybe
nonetheless,
this is where we have the choose your own adventure.
I mean, really, I think
Yeah,
that's a good idea.
yeah. Okay, let's get to the next spicy take here. This is from listener. Those who
No,
decry
don't. He's been DMing me all this time. Don't reward his harassments.
no, but he hasn't been DMing me, so I can do it. Those who
Ugh.
decry EQ as only being able to have a negative effect on sound quality should only be allowed to listen to music that was mixed without EQ. uh,
Blessed take. I love
so
this take.
so
I want to marry this take.
um so but the point is that they shouldn't be listening to headphones. They
Well,
should
no, I
just
mean,
be they should be listening to live only. Live,
well, no. They can listen to the things where Chesky occasionally
What was
just
it? I was
takes
gonna
a
say there's
4128.
Otmar Liebert did some stuff like that, if I remember
Yeah, where they
correctly
just
as
take a
well.
head, they put it in a room,
Yeah,
they don't EQ it,
yeah.
you play it back on your
It's so
headphones.
dark and muffled sounding though. The ones
Uh,
that I've heard are very dark and muffled sounding, and I think one of them is from Chesky as well.
I mean, wouldn't surprise me. It's easy to mangle a binaural recording. Like
Yeah,
binaural is really hard to do well.
yeah. I mean, I like the Chesky stuff, but there were some that I heard where I was like, that this is really dark, and it could have just been the space they were in or something.
Yeah, I mean, that's one of the hard things with non multi-track audio in the sense of stuff that isn't mixed and
Yeah,
mastered on a multi-track process is that you're going to actually have to deal with the real acoustics of a real room. I would argue that's also kind of the cool thing about it, but
yeah,
it means that you actually have to have the right recording space for the sound that you want.
right.
It's just an interesting one. I think that it's never going to dominate in audio, right? Like it's completely impractical. It's not how music production works. But it's kind of cool. But I don't think that the people who don't want any EQ on their headphones would be that happy listening to only music that had never been EQ'd once. Particularly when you consider, and I'll point this out, if you use more than one different microphone with the same pickup pattern, you are EQing.
Hmm.
The EQ you're implementing is the FR difference between those microphones. But if you say this mic sounds better for this, you are EQing. So,
When
yeah.
you're using a cable that has an effect on the impedance of your head, you are EQing.
Yes, for all three of those people, yes.
Yeah, people with the RAL headphones, for example.
Yeah, all three of them.
They exist. They matter. No, I mean, I don't know if I would go as far as to punish people for having, the wrong opinion about EQ.
Well, no, no.
But
I mean,
but
he's just being. It's
but
just being snarky. It's like
yeah,
if you
yeah,
hate
exactly.
EQ on headphones, why do you like it elsewhere?
Yeah. But I think more to the point of that, or more to the point of the solution there, it's to Im- improve uh, the way that EQ is being done for them. Because if they're having that opinion of EQ, it usually is an indication that either something is wrong. But I think with what they've actually done. But I think far more frequently, it's that when they toggle the profile off or whatever, it's louder because they haven't factored in digital volume. So
I
you
mean,
know,
like, let's be charitable here. I think that he's talking about a certain prolific Discord user and also brand owner, which is Ruck of Auroras, specifically, who he's subtweeting, or at
oh,
least someone else was
did he
subtweeting
decry
there.
EQ?
Ruck's generally not a big EQ guy, I would say.
Is it in what vein though? Because like there's good reasons to decry EQ, specifically because it's cumbersome or annoying to do, or you can't expect people to do it. But then there's also it degrades the sound quality. I think it
Okay,
matters which is
listener wants
which
to
here.
clarify he's not subtweeting. Someone
Oh,
else
okay,
was
okay,
subtweeting
okay.
in the response there.
Right.
There's a number of people who think that EQ inherently degrades sound quality in some sort of non-tonal respect. I
From
yeah,
so- Go ahead.
for those people, I think that the only recourse is to listen to music that was recorded without EQ.
No, I don't know. I think realistically we can. Those are the people who it's just a matter of it's like an education thing, or it's like you need to walk them down the garden path, and be like, okay, but let me show you. It can be good. um
So
here's
we're getting some hot
Yeah, we're getting some good ones.
questions.
Okay, here's one from Sunny. Crin's target is really just another reviewer target, but is carried by clout.
Absolutely correct.
Yep.
I have yelled at
Of
him
course
for
it is.
years about it.
Yeah. Now, I mean, I think it'd be cool to pit for IEMs. It'd be cool for them if Sean were to do another study or whatever, right? Like what they did with over ears. Not even the ones where they did a listening experiment, like with filters, but one where like one of the previous ones where it was like, okay, how does this the one where he was using RR1 and RRG and stuff like that, to include IEF in that just to see how it does. I'm curious.
I mean, honestly, that's something we should do.
Yeah, well, we can. We are doing it. We are literally doing that.
Well, we are going to do that. We
Yes.
aren't in the process of doing that.
uh,
Are we? Because
Well,
if we are, I don't know about it.
yeah, we'll talk.
Why do you leave me out of that?
No, it's Chrono was asking. So we're at the very least going to do the Chrono video. That's already.
Yeah.
Yeah. But the formal listening experiment is one that I'm certainly going to pitch. I think we'll have the support to do it.
Joel Merrifield says those who have the wrong opinion on EQ deserve punishment. This is just basic moral philosophy. Ah, so he's a virtue ethicist.
Yeah.
All right. Let's see.
I think my response was a little bit too ethic of care.
Sorry, that's an instinctive response.
Yeah.
Does long hair affect seal less than shorter hair? I actually have an anecdote about that. I think it actually kind of does. Well, actually, I think there's like a non-linear curve. Like when your hair is at a certain like
Are you talking like in
buzz.
between the thing and or just general wear? Like where the pad fits, like
Yeah. I think that the question is like if you have like long locks versus normal length versus like short fuzz hair, my finding is that mid-length hair is like where it's not around the ear, but it's like not shaved or like just a fuzz, seals better than like if you have the sides of your head just as like peach fuzz. But that still seals better than super long hair, which seals the worst.
what about side curls?
I don't have curly hair, so I cannot give you an anecdote, but I have had a shaved head, extremely long hair, and my current length of hair in the last 2 years.
That's
Actually, not a shaved head, almost shaved.
we should all just have skullets.
What the hell is a skullet?
Well, it's a mullet, but like you still have the shaved
Is
head.
it? What do you mean?
So you
So,
have the long in the back, but still the shave.
so wait, you shave everything but the back?
But the mullet back part.
Ew. That's way less cool than the skeleton with a
Oh no,
mullet, which is what I assumed it was.
it's horrific.
Yeah, no, why would you tell me that?
You've never seen a skullet before?
I've never seen a skullet before.
Uh,
Everyone around here, they're all hipsters. They're all wearing those beanie hats, but they're not called that. What are they called? Toques.
Toques in Canada.
Oh, is
Do
toque
you
a
guys all
Canada
call
thing?
them? Yeah, toques definitely a Canadian thing. Do you
I don't know.
call all of that? Do Americans call that stuff beanies?
Or skull caps or whatever.
Really? Oh no. Because we for us we refer to things as beanies as well if they are just like around here. But a toque is a proper like winter thing that you put that covers your ears.
Yeah, no, we don't have toques here.
Yeah. No. Toque is a proper winter thing.
Someone asked if you cut your hair recently, Resolve.
No, it just all fell out. No, I've been shaving my head for a while now. It was time. It was like, I mean, I like to think it makes me more aerodynamic, faster in a straight line. Less
Honestly, it
resistance.
makes you look a lot better.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, like, the thing is, you got a good head. Like, some people, they got bad heads.
It's a big
I,
head. That's a
well,
problem.
no, I mean, like, hold on. Can we get, like, a close-up of the dome? Like, you've got a good dome. It's like,
If I had a nickel every time I heard that,
yeah, no, I mean, it's a smooth, well contoured head.
Yeah.
That's something that's,
Not
honestly,
everybody
like,
can have, yeah.
my head has some more weird, like, it's not lumpy, but it's like got some distinct contour. If I shave my
Some
head, I look
horns
like
underneath the mop.
no, but I totally look like a white supremacist if I shave my head, and you don't, which is your
Oh,
advantage.
that's a plus. Always nice to not look like a white supremacist.
Well, in 9 out of 10 cases, at least.
Yeah. Let's see if there's another spicy question or take here.
Well, someone said Sundara Closed only did the name correctly, which is true.
I mean, all of those. I don't know if I've given an account of how much I didn't like the Audavina, but I really did not like the Audavina.
Have we posted the note that you wrote, Taryn?
I don't
'Cause-
even remember what I wrote. It was something like cast it into the fire or something like that.
I think you were like, we shouldn't carry this, and then it's something a bit more explicit subsequent to that.
I feel like I indicated cast it into the fire in my note.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm really not a fan. Because it was one of those where I noticed that as soon as I put it on, it would actually amplify certain sounds, or like it wasn't amplify is sort of the wrong word. It's like, when you put on closed back headphones, it seals you from the ambient sounds, and like your computer, you don't hear your computer fan or whatever anymore, right? Or you don't hear the HVAC. With this one, it was like it would still do that, where like the higher frequency stuff would be attenuated, but then it was almost like it made that stuff come through at a lower frequency somehow. That was louder. So it really defeated the purpose of
right.
it.
So there's like that acoustic gain thing you get where it like resonates in the wow, that's really bad.
I was like, I don't understand why this exists, and then the frequency response was just crazy wild. Like, yeah, what? I don't adore it. I'll just put it that way.
It's a very strange headphone.
Yeah, I think I posted the FR in our Discord.
Yeah, and it's real bad.
Yeah.
Yet to hear a closed back headphone that was fun to listen to for more than 20 minutes. Ooh, that is a hot take.
I want to try some of those. After I EQ'd that Denon, I actually quite enjoyed it.
Which Denon?
It was the 9200. I didn't like it without EQ. Without EQ, it sounded very strange.
The 7200 sucked.
Did it? Okay. I
But
haven't
the
heard.
9200 I haven't heard.
The 9200 also was not great without EQ, but after EQ, I really quite enjoyed it, and I think it's because it had the treble features all correct. Like it had the, and it was just a matter of downshelving, and
Yeah.
it started to sound really good. I saw an FR recently of I think it was like the 5200, and that looked okay. So I'm curious to try the rest of the Denons. Otherwise, Focal Radiance is pretty good for its FR.
Really old Cobb wants to come on the stream also.
I'm trying to see if I can find
James.
No, Jake.
Jake.
You should put Really Cup on the stream sometime. I'm caught up to the chat now. Yeah, I mean, we want to have more people from the community, I think, on. I think, I'm not sure exactly when we'll do this, but we want to have Side Salad on at some point. Maybe that listener guy as well.
Yeah, I mean, we could have had listener on today.
Yeah.
Then he wouldn't have been trolling in chat constantly.
Exactly. I don't want to take away from like our, our best commenters in chat.
I mean, best is relative. Joel would be
Most
fun.
prolific.
Joel would be quite fun actually, because Joel has some interesting takes.
Okay, yeah, I'm on board for more community people in general.
Yeah. I think the probably priority is towards like reviewers though in general.
Most likely, yeah.
Like perhaps someone whose name ends in 3 numbers.
Mr. 571, perhaps.
Just maybe.
Not to be confused with the U-boat. It was a good movie.
Someone will get never seen that movie.
Oh, it's a good movie. Yeah, we can maybe have FC Construct on. He's a reviewer. Technically, listeners also.
I mean, really, we should have more of our people on.
Our people.
Yeah, the ones we own.
We just have a collection of people.
I mean, yeah, isn't that the goal?
Yes,
we buy them so that they stop, being their own individual people, and we can control their narratives.
I don't think that's the goal. I think. Yeah. I think it's more to harness their narratives. Actually, I think we should do a stream with Cameron because,
Well, no, we owe them a stream with Cameron because they all want to see us fight.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I mean, this is sort of the point: is that we all have, there are things that we agree on for sure, but there's also things that we have differences of opinion on, and I think it'd be interesting to get those debates going. I'm curious also where DMS weighs in on a lot of this stuff too. So I think we'll need to have DMS on. Okay, I'm open to us doing a stream with Zeos as well.
Why would Zeos want to stream with us?
Hey, something fun to do. Why does Zeos do anything that he does?
Okay, well, you mean you, so that'd be one that I sit at.
No, I gotta have you.
His whole thing is hating at quote measurement.
This is why it's fun.
Oh God. I don't think that would be fun for him.
No, I think it would be. I mean, we had all kinds of fun at CanGem with a reviewer panel, and he had a lot to say about measurements, but one of them was that he thinks measurements should have more colors.
Honestly,
was a good take. Yeah.
Honestly, like, why don't we have like a heat map kind of thing going on?
Because that'll get confused with CSD.
Well, it doesn't have to have that axis
specific thing. Yeah, I know, but it'll still get confused with it.
Validate. All right, hold on.
Actually, we do. Don't we have something that can do? Well, I guess we can't talk about that yet. Hopefully.
I see what's being said.
Hopefully, Resolve and Co-Stranger can provide some answers because I'm in the market for one too.
Hello.
Are we both strangers?
No. I'm the cooperative stranger.
Yeah, but that means I'm also a stranger.
Well,
maybe he meant streamer.
Well, no. I think he Resolve and Co. So the implication is that we all work for you, which in a sense is true.
Yes.
So he's
stranger
asking,
can provide. I'm confused about the stranger aspect.
I am the stranger. I am the mysterious stranger.
Oh, okay, we got that. Yeah,
I mean, to be fair, you didn't even put my actual name, which is what I'm credited with on the site.
I didn't put my actual name either.
Well, yeah, but you don't have an actual name. We had to invent the identity. That's why you're the second Andrew.
Can I say I hate that I have this, public moniker that, instead of my actual name. But to be fair, it does make things easier in this industry.
Given how many Andrews
Given how many Andrews there are.
I mean,
yeah.
you should just come up with a new name.
I could go by my middle name.
You could just be like, you could find some name from like your ancestral homeland or something. If you were like, well, you can't be Gunther, I guess, but you could find something from like the Volga Germans, and then nobody would ever have heard of that.
I'm not even German. I don't have any German background.
Then why do you speak German?
It's a mystery to me too.
Wait, I thought you said your grandparents were fucking Volga Germans.
No, no, they're Baltic. They're Latvians, or well, yeah,
Wait, then why did they speak German?
Baltic German. So
Okay.
this is before the what is the Molotov-Ribbentrop thing?
Okay,
Um,
fine. Eastern European Germans.
yes. Um,
Also, Craig and Tortoise, just to get off of that one, asks, how do DACs sound different if they're supposed to be transparent? It's hard to shop for a DAC as a noob when apparently all you hear is they sound different. I have never perceived that.
is that true? That you've never perceived that, or is it that you don't currently perceive that?
I have never perceived a DAC as sounding different. I have had amps where I thought that I heard something. I have never had a DAC. I've had a DAC that was an effects processor where I was like, holy shit, that's horrible.
Okay.
But
So-
I have never had a DAC that was, by measurements, apparently transparent sound.
No,
not
we're not
speak.
talking about measurements though, because I think that's the point of the question, or the thrust of the question. That
Well, no,
if-
you're saying if they're all supposed to be transparent.
yeah, so they all measure, yeah. There's nothing audible that would show up in the measurements, right? It's all below audible threshold for anything, but there is this inertia of people saying that they sound different.
Yeah.
So the question is more, is what to do with that, what to do with that information. In
Well,
my
I mean, I think
situation,
that-
like I can say that I have listened to DACs where I thought that I was listening to something that there was a difference, but I didn't do ABX. I didn't do blind ABX with that, right? So it's like, would increasing the controls reveal no audible difference? And I think there's a good case to be made for that, essentially. So like oftentimes, the point here is that oftentimes when people are reporting that they hear a difference, this is my suspicion, that it's down to a volume difference. I think. I'm sure Cameron has
there's
something
a-
else to say on it, so that's why we need to have him on.
There's a lot of things that we can, that can prime us, right?
Yeah.
But for me, at least, I guess it's never been sufficient. Like, I didn't come into audio thinking that DAC chips would sound different, and I've never perceived that. And I've never had any experience to challenge that, nor have I ever seen any data that made me question that. The exceptions obviously have been things misbehaving, right? Like I've had a DAC that had a sample rate issue that sounded like crackling, but outside of that, I haven't experienced anything like that. And
So-
honestly, my recommendation to people would basically just be operate on the assumption that you won't. Like, get something that
And if
is
you do,
within your
then
budget.
awesome.
And yeah, I mean, like, if you have an experience,
Yeah.
there's nothing wrong with it. But you shouldn't throw a lot of money into someone else's perception.
That is a very practical way to go about. Dare I say pragmatic?
I do like pragmatism, although I
You
haven't
don't
actually
say.
read any William James.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Pascal's wager?
Yeah. Fun fact, my mom wanted to name me after Pascal.
Wager or Pascal?
No, Pascal the guy.
Okay.
Yeah, I was almost named Blaze. That's why I'm named Blaze.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that's interesting little tidbit of information that we know about Blaine now.
Yeah.
I guess she was a pragmatist too.
No, she was a computer she was a computer programmer.
Okay. From listener, this stream was wrong from the beginning and should have been way more focused on acoustic impedance.
See, there are people who actually want that to be more nerdy.
Yes,
Just not very. I will say we had more viewers last time than we had this time.
it's because we
And
had
we went
Critical
deeper
on.
into. We had more viewers before we had Critical on.
It's because it was just me.
Ah,
No, I should.
yes. No, that's
say
a good point. No, I can depart.
No. If anything, I need to depart. I have. It is getting into StarCraft time. I need to get back on that ladder. I have
Are you, is that all you spend your weekends doing? Just hanging out with your girlfriend in StarCraft?
no, because I don't play when she's around because it's like it's very loud, like the keyboard. So
Okay, so do you know why I like my key switches and why I didn't like the purple ones?
oh, they're a
It's
little loud. They're
because
clacky.
yeah,
Yeah,
whereas the silent switch browns, I never bottom out. It's so nice.
yeah. The reds, I find I mean I bottom out no matter what, right? That's
Listener makes a good
heavy-handed.
point. Everyone join the Discord so that you can watch Andrew play StarCraft live.
I was thinking. I mean, the problem with it is that Discord streaming is really bad. Like the bitrate is so low that it just looks like a pixelated mess.
I
Um,
think that's something that can be fixed either on your end or on the server's end, and we have control of both, so
I've
we can fix that.
I don't know. I don't think it's on my end that I've looked into it and tried, but I couldn't find anything that would fix that. Um, but I'm considering because I used to actually have a Twitch account. I would stream on Twitch before I became a headphone reviewer. Um, and so I'm considering either starting a new one or reviving that just for StarCraft nonsense. Um, I, I'm getting back into it. I quit for a while, for a long time, but it's a fun thing to do, on the weekends when listening to tunes and getting into flow state. Really terrible laptop. And I went from that to an actual proper setup of a DAC and an amp. And that difference when I was using the HE500 was so substantial that, it's like that is a difference that people want to chase. And it turns out that those headphones actually needed some power. But I think that's where a lot of that inertia comes from. When you that first difference that you heard going from something onboard to something dedicated for headphones
Here's
that
the
may have
thing.
needed it.
I've heard plenty of onboard that was fine.
Actually, nowadays it's so much better. Like a lot of the onboard stuff, yeah. Don't modern MacBooks have like great outputs? A lot of motherboards, like PC motherboards, have totally fine outputs too. Oh, did the chat disconnect?
The stream did a brief crash thing. I had to refresh it. Craig and Tortoise didn't hear what I said to him.
Oh,
So yeah, just to rehash, Craig and Tortoise, if you're in the US, probably an Apple dongle or a JDS Atom DAC would be my recommendation. You can get a combo unit. There's quite a few from various brands. I wouldn't worry about it so much. In general, if you want to try something out, go ahead and do it. But don't be worried that you're missing out on something would be my strongest encouragement.
you should
Like
buy
that's
that DCS Lena stack. This is like when I'm shopping for cars and my dad's like, "Yeah, get a Porsche." Like, no.
well, listen, I'm not going to take that recommendation from anyone who doesn't pronounce the E.
What? Oh, a Porsche?
Porsche. Yeah. If you call it a Porsche, I'll consider it. If you're like, you should get a Porsche, I'm just gonna be like, no.
I love how that's the thing that makes a
Well,
break.
it's like if someone's like, oh, would you like some Cabernet Sauvignon? Yeah,
I
it's
mean,
not
you
gonna make
wouldn't
me
you
buy
wouldn't
it.
anyway.
Well, my point stands. Would you like some Kobe beef?
Yeah. Well,
It's just
apparently
not
we're
a
all
very
pronouncing
nice
this Sandara
sales pitch.
wrong, but
Wait, how's it supposed to be pronounced?
there's no. I keep getting these comments in any video that I do where I talk about it, where people are like, "You should." There's no long vowels.
Sundara.
Yeah, instead of Sandara, it's like Sundara, something like that. But everybody calls it Sandara, so I'm gonna continue to call it Sandara. It's a more normal reading for me of the spelling of it. So
Can we have Caleb on for just 1 minute on voice to explain what he just said in chat?
it'll I mean,
No, I'm just threatening him because do you see what he said in chat?
yeah. No, I think that's probably right. I think.
No, he's no.
Or is there a reference I'm not?
There is a reference that you're not getting there.
Okay.
Yes,
Okay. But yeah,
it's
no
okay.
long a. Oh, is this a Weeb reference?
Yes, it is a weeb reference.
Okay. Anyway, so the pronunciation of things, that's always fun.
Yeah, right. So We had someone, so we had Brandon saying, spicy takes, people who spend tens of thousands of dollars on amps and DACs to achieve minute differences to the sound can achieve virtually the same thing with free EQ or crossfeed software, but they refuse to admit it.
Not even that. Can achieve far better sound just by EQ.
Yep. Although, for effect stuff, like let's say you want Zale, the Zale crossfeed
Oh
thing,
yeah, that. Yeah,
you would actually need to actually have something that matched how that particular circuit behaved, which isn't necessarily that easy.
yeah,
But
yeah.
I think that in general that's I mean like I don't even think most people who buy fancy stuff disagree with that, really. Like
Mm-hmm.
clearly when you spend that much money you're chasing the last few percent.
Mm-hmm.
It's just a question of whether you want that and whether you want the
Yeah,
big
I think.
fancy boxes.
Yeah. I hear what you're saying, right? Like even at, I don't think anybody is expecting it. Well, actually, I don't know. There are definitely some people who get mad at me for saying that I didn't like the DT990 because they say, well, if you tried it with this $2,000 amp or whatever it was, it'll completely transform that experience. Because I heard it on something that was a $2,000. I can't remember what it was, right? And it completely transformed that experience to the point where I hated it before and now I love it.
Okay,
So
well
you're
that
not giving a fair assessment of the headphones if you don't do this. Now,
I mean honestly we should that's a case where we should just measure it, right? Like
no,
if
no.
someone's making a claim
So,
like
so,
that,
so
we
my,
should
my
just
point there is, I bet I know what happened. I bet in that scenario, it was padware. That
Oh
would be,
yeah, I mean that's always the classic thing with the DTs, right?
yeah,
Like as they wear in, the treble goes from murderous spines of death to
yeah,
pretty okay.
yeah, exactly. All right, we've been going for almost 2.5 hours.
He has no endurance. This guy.
No, I just have to, the energy needs to go towards getting Grandmaster again.
Yeah,
I'm,
see, that's the thing.
I am about 100
Join
MMR
our
away.
Discord to recommend for a 24-hour audio stream, by the way.
Yeah, yeah, we'll
The
have a
link should be in
poll.
the description, right?
It is. Should be, yeah. Um, but yeah, let's do one more spicy take from each of us, or for each of us. One more spicy take, guys. Spicy take,
Yeah.
comments, questions in the chat. We'll take one more each.
100K subs, we get the 24-hour stream. That would
No, it's
actually be
it's
great.
just a perpetual live stream until we get 100K subs. It's just always on. All right. Music is meant to sound like it's in front of you, not around you. That's why speakers are still king. But aren't headphones also angled to be in front of you, kind of?
No.
I mean, they are still like on your head, but drivers are
Also,
angled.
also, I don't even agree with music is supposed to sound like it's in front of you. How often are you just standing there right in front of the center of the band, just
I mean, that
staring
that
at
that
them
is
like,
that's like a tautological thing, right? Like if you're used to always hearing music through speakers that are in front of you, then it'll always sound like music is coming from in front of you. No?
yeah.
What about
Yeah.
surround sound? You use speakers and surround sound that comes from behind you.
Sound. I mean, supposed is or meant to is always like, but like sound is meant to come from a point in space usually, and
Ah,
that's
now
something that neither speakers nor headphones do a good job on.
Kef, isn't their whole
But
thing?
no,
Uh,
not a point source.
oh, okay.
No, I mean like sound should be coming from a distributed set of points in space where its actual origins are, not from two distinct speakers or an illusionary point between the two.
Right,
Sorry, illusory point between the two of them, nor from just wherever with headphones.
right. But
Stephen Russell says, "Oh, sorry."
I
Yeah.
was I was just gonna say, I think the point there may be if you're at a concert, it is often in front of you, or like listening to a person playing it is often in front of you. Like, why would you intentionally turn your head to the side, or turn around to look the other way?
So there is a thing there where, and it's where head tracking is pretty important. Timbrally, like we are moving all the time a bit. So we are actually used to hearing things from not. I mean, like I'm not looking right at the camera because I'm incompetent at streaming. But like it's like that with listening to stuff too. You're not directly straight head on with whatever the sound source is all the time. And if the sound source is always fixed to be that way, it tends to sound pretty weird. And an area where stereo speakers kind of fall down is that as you move and as you
Yeah.
turn, things generally kind of fail to track with reality that way. Not that really we are referencing with reality for the most part with stereo anyway.
Mhm.
But anyway, Joel says this is why object-based audio is going to kill stereo hi-fi. God, I hope so. Given time,
Like,
God, I hope so.
you hope that that's what kills stereo hi-fi, or just that stereo hi-fi gets killed?
Well, I mean, obviously we're always going to have stereo because we're always going to have headphones. Unless you grow two
Yeah.
more ears, it's going to stay stereo.
I'm working on it. If I concentrate real hard, sprout one out.
But I would like to see object-based audio become much more prominent. Like, I think that's going to be a really big change for the concept of audio fidelity.
Hmm.
Ironically, a stance which puts me in alignment with the founder of Stereophile, Gordon Holt,
Interesting.
who, yeah, I think who is now passed, but who was fairly infamous for his late life view that basically sticking with stereo over multi-channel had made hi-fi irrelevant.
And that makes the name of the website a bit ironic.
Well, I mean, it was a magazine when he sold it, but yeah,
Right.
it was it was a different time. So I did want to address Stephen Russell's comment. You can't measure without matching the ear-brain response of each individual to compare. That's not true. You do not need to know what's going on inside the head so long as you have a good model of how the brain interacts with the information at the eardrum, and you can measure the information at the eardrum. Otherwise, we would not have been able to do any psychoacoustic research at all before like 20 years from now, I guess.
Yeah. I mean, this is the stuff that's super interesting. I'm also why I was interested in the MDAX stuff, but yeah. Guitarists make the worst audio files. Sorry, metal. Apparently. All right. We have been going exactly 2.5 hours.
Perfect.
So yeah, I'm going to cut the stream there. Thanks to everybody for tuning in. Thanks to all the fine folks for your spicy takes and spicy questions. This is always fun to do. And of course, big thanks to Blaine, otherwise known as Mad Economist.
Otherwise known as measurement or graph guy, was
He was
it?
the graph guy. Yeah. I'm not going to answer that, Brandon. Only you can answer that. Yeah, as usual, check out the link in the description for our Discord if you want to hang out with us there. And also the forum up on headphones for the headphones.com community forum, and then the audio files up on headphones.com. And that is basically it. So we'll see you guys in the next one.
Bye.